The Sleeping Beauty Problem, a thought experiment about probability, memory, and self. You're lying still. Your body rests. Your mind softens. And maybe, somewhere in another version of you, you're already asleep. But imagine now. You wake up in a quiet room. You don't know what day it is. You don't know how long you've been here. You only remember falling asleep. A voice tells you, you were part of an experiment. And the rules were these. You would be put to sleep on Sunday. Then, a fair coin would be tossed. If it lands heads, you're awakened on Monday only. If it lands tails, you're awakened on Monday, and again on Tuesday, but with your memory of the first awakening erased. So every time you wake up, you don't know if it's Monday or Tuesday. You don't know whether the coin landed heads or tails. Now comes the question, what should you believe? You awaken, and someone asks you, what is the probability that the coin landed heads? It seems simple. The coin is fair. Heads and tails are equal, 50-50. But is it really? You start to reason. If it was heads, you were awakened once. If it was tails, you were awakened twice, once on Monday, once on Tuesday, but with no memory of the first. So which awakening is this? There are two main answers. The split, 1/2er versus 2/3er. The halfers say, the coin is fair. You knew in advance what would happen. Nothing has changed. The answer is 1/2. The 2/3ers say, but wait, you are twice as likely to find yourself awake in the tails world, because you would be awakened twice. There are two ways to waken tails, Monday or Tuesday, but only one way to waken heads, Monday. So the odds, from your perspective, are now 2-1. They say the answer is 1/3 heads, 2/3 tails. Both sides have arguments. Both sound reasonable. And both disturb the mind in different ways. The deeper paradox. But this isn't just about math. It's about self. About how you define your experience when you don't know when you are. The question becomes, what is you when your memories are incomplete? Are you a continuation of someone or just a version floating in isolation? What does it mean to exist when you can't even place yourself in time? Amnesia and identity. The Sleeping Beauty problem echoes deeper fears. What if your memories aren't reliable? What if your experiences aren't linear? How do you build a self when you forget yourself? We often assume we are a timeline, a straight, waking arrow. But what if we are loops? Branches? Copies? Beauty wakes up. She doesn't know which version she is, and neither do you, as you drift through sleep each night, waking inside uncertainty. Imagine waking again. Same room, same voice. No memory of the last time. No sense of progress. Only the awareness that you're awake again, and the question still lingers. What do you believe now? This is how the mind wrestles with time, with consciousness, with uncertainty. Beauty's confusion mirrors your own. Not just when you sleep, but when you wonder whether you've changed, or just circled back to the same inner place. Probability of being. The real question isn't about coins. It's about being you right now, with limited knowledge. It's about how you assign meaning when the past is fuzzy and the future is sealed. Beauty must decide what to believe in a world where she can't trust her memories. And perhaps, so must you. Dreams as versions. Each night, you fall asleep. And in that darkness, your brain generates worlds. Versions of yourself. Some vivid, some silent, some forgotten the moment you wake. Which one is the real you? Perhaps all of them. Or none. Perhaps waking and dreaming are not so different after all. Just shifts in probability. Final reflection. The Sleeping Beauty problem asks, what is rational belief when your mind is no longer anchored in time? But at night, when you lie in the dark, you're not seeking answers. You're floating in the question. So as you begin to drift, ask yourself, if I woke up again tomorrow, not knowing the day, not knowing the path behind me, what would I believe? Would I assume the world is as I left it? Or would I wonder if I'm just another version, in another loop? Sleep well, beauty. The coin has already been tossed, and you are already dreaming. Brain in a vat. You wake up. You see a room. You feel the air. You move your hand. You think, I exist. But what if none of this is real? What if your body is gone? What if your memories are false? What if your entire experience, right now, in this moment, is a simulation being fed to your brain? Or rather, to the only part of you that remains, your brain, suspended in a fluid-filled vat, connected to wires, receiving electrical signals, living a lie. This is the brain in a vat scenario, a modern descendant of Descartes' evil demon, and one of the most disturbing thought experiments in philosophy. You are a brain. You've been removed from your body. And now, somewhere in a lab, machines feed you electrical inputs that perfectly imitate reality. You feel hunger. You feel wind. You feel pain. You believe you see light, hear music, touch skin. But none of it exists. The signals are illusions. And your beliefs, every single one, are based on lies. The question is not how this happened. The question is, how would you know? And the answer might be, you wouldn't. Our senses lie to us all the time. We see depth on flat surfaces. We feel motion when we're still. We remember things that never happened. We dream and only realize it later. The brain in a vat scenario asks, if all your experiences could be artificially created, if you could be tricked perfectly, what then is real? It's not a matter of science. It's a matter of epistemology, the study of knowledge itself. How do you know that your knowledge is true? How do you trust that your thoughts reflect the world? If your reality can be simulated, then what is reality? This idea echoes in many forms. In the Matrix, bodies lie dormant while minds live in code. In dreams, we experience entire lives in seconds, with no idea that we're asleep. In some spiritual philosophies, the physical world is Maya, illusion. Neuroscience suggests that even now, what you see is a construction. Your brain predicts reality. It doesn't record it. So even without a vat, your experience is already a simulation, built from assumptions, guesses, past impressions. Maybe you don't need wires to be fooled. Maybe you already are. René Descartes once asked, what if an evil demon is deceiving me about everything? He answered with, cogito ergo sum. I think, therefore I am. Even if I'm wrong about the world, I must exist as something that thinks. But is that enough? The brain in a vat still thinks, still doubts, still feels. But is that existence, or just the appearance of it? Is there a way out? If everything you believe could be faked, how can you trust anything? Some argue that logic remains, that even in the vat, 2 + 2 = 4, that math and reason can guide us. Others say, no. If your entire experience is manipulated, then even your reasoning might be a trick. So the terrifying possibility emerges. You could be living a completely fake life with no way of ever knowing. Not a glitch, not a dream, just a perfect loop. So tonight, as your thoughts begin to dissolve and your senses fade into the quiet of sleep, ask yourself, if your hand is not real, if your bed is only code, if your memories were typed by someone else? Who are you? A self? A thought? A ghost in a jar? Or just a brain in a vat that dreamed it had a life? The Chinese room. You walk into a room. There's a desk, a thick book full of symbols, and a slot in the wall. Every few minutes, a piece of paper slides through the slot. On it, rows of unfamiliar characters. You don't know the language. It looks like Chinese. But you can't read Chinese. Not a single word. You open the book. It tells you what to do. For every pattern you receive, you find the matching entry and look up the response. You copy new symbols onto another sheet of paper and slide it back out through the slot. People on the other side of the wall receive your message. They read it, and it makes perfect sense to them. They believe they're talking to someone fluent in Chinese. But you're not. You're just following instructions, matching symbols to symbols, understanding nothing. This is the thought experiment, known as the Chinese room, proposed by philosopher John Searle in 1980. Its purpose is to challenge the idea that a computer running the right program can understand language. What's the argument? Imagine a computer programmed to process Chinese. You type in a question. It gives you a perfect, intelligent reply. It seems fluent. It seems human. But is it? Searle says, the computer is like the person in the room. It doesn't know what the words mean. It doesn't understand Chinese. It's just manipulating symbols based on syntactic rules. It simulates understanding. It doesn't have it, just like the man at the desk. From the outside, it looks like a conversation. But inside, there's no meaning, no experience, no thought. Just input, rule, output, syntax versus semantics. At the heart of the Chinese room is the distinction between syntax and semantics. Syntax is structure, the form of a sentence, the rules that guide word order. Semantics is meaning, the feeling behind a word, the concept it points to, the thing you imagine when you hear it. A machine, Searle says, can handle syntax, but it doesn't have semantics. It doesn't know what pain or love or sunlight means. It only moves shapes around. And moving shapes is not the same as thinking. But what about the system? Some critics responded, it's not the person who understands. It's the whole system, person, book, room, instructions, together. Searle answered, fine. Imagine you memorize the book. Internalize every instruction. You become the whole system. Now you answer fluently, on your own. You still don't understand Chinese. You're still just manipulating patterns. Symbols in, symbols out. No idea what they mean. Still no understanding. Still no mind. Why it matters. The Chinese room argument isn't about languages. It's about the nature of mind. It asks, is consciousness just computation? Is thought nothing more than processing? And more deeply, can simulation ever become real? If a machine can imitate a mind, flawlessly, forever, does it have one? If it feels nothing, knows nothing, understands nothing, but pretends perfectly, is that enough? And if it's not, then what is a mind? A quiet challenge. Some philosophers think Searle is wrong. They say that meaning emerges from complexity, that understanding is not in the parts, but in the pattern, in the system as a whole. Maybe we don't feel the code inside us either. Maybe humans are symbol processors, just messier. But others think Searle is right, that something's missing, that experience cannot be coded, that behind language must be someone who understands. So tonight, as your mind begins to rest and language fades into silence, Ask yourself, if every word you've ever said was just a pattern, a response you didn't choose, were you still thinking? And if someone, somewhere, typed perfect answers to every question without ever knowing what they meant, is that a mind? Or just a room full of echoes? The Doppelgänger Paradox. Imagine this. You're walking home. It's late. The streets are empty. You pass a shop window and glance at the glass and see yourself, but not just your reflection. Someone is standing behind it, wearing your clothes, matching your movements, looking back at you. It's you, perfectly, utterly, absolutely, your doppelganger. And in that instant, something deep inside you breaks. Because now the question is not, who are you? But, which one is you? The thought experiment. The Doppelgänger Paradox asks, if there were a being exactly like you, same memories, habits, scars, voice, thoughts, what would make you, you? You share the same past. You make the same jokes. You finish the same sentences. You remember your grandmother's perfume. You regret the same mistake from age 14. Everything matches. So who is the real one? And if there's no difference, does it even matter? Or does it matter more than anything? The fear of being replaced. This paradox taps into something ancient. The fear of being replaced. Not killed, not forgotten, replaced, silently, perfectly, without anyone noticing. They wave to your friends. They sleep in your bed. They scroll through your memories. And no one suspects a thing, except you, watching from the other side. What is identity? Are you your body? Then so are they. Are you your mind? Then so are they. If you vanish and the double continues your life, will the world have lost anything? Would your parents mourn? Would your partner know? Would you even know if the roles were reversed? And if a perfect copy of you could live your life without interruption, was your uniqueness ever real? Splitting the self. There are myths of this. The shadow twin, the mirror self, the uncanny double. Carl Jung spoke of the shadow, the hidden part of you that walks beside you in silence. In science fiction, clones confront their originals. One must die, or both lose their minds, because there can't be two you, not for long. Something must give. The horror of symmetry. What disturbs us isn't the double, it's the symmetry. If someone tries to be you, but fails, they're a fake, a mask, no threat. But if someone tries to be you and succeeds, what does that make you? Disposable? Expendable? Or worse? Unnecessary. The test now asks, if you met your double and they begged you to believe that they were the original, how would you prove that you are? What could you say that they couldn't say? What thought could you think that they couldn't also think? What memory could you claim that they didn't also remember? You are no longer a person. You are a duplicate arguing with itself. So tonight, as your breath slows and you slip quietly out of the world, ask yourself, if someone else woke up tomorrow, in your bed, in your mind, in your skin, how would you know it wasn't you? And if you couldn't tell, would they? The experience machine. Imagine this, a perfect machine, flawless, eternal, silent. You lie down, close your eyes, and your brain is connected. Inside, you feel joy, love, triumph, adventure. You become a famous artist. You explore unknown galaxies. You fall in love again and again. Every dream comes true, and it feels real. Every sight, every touch, every taste, as vivid as life itself. This is the experience machine. It creates your perfect life, and you will never know it isn't real. The question is simple. Would you plug in? Nozick's thought experiment. In 1974, philosopher Robert Nozick posed this idea to challenge hedonism, the belief that pleasure is the highest good. If pleasure is all that matters, then the machine is paradise. But if you hesitate, if you feel discomfort, then something deeper is at stake, something beyond happiness, something like truth, the temptation. The machine doesn't malfunction. It doesn't break. It doesn't betray. Inside, you will be fulfilled, respected, loved, inspired. Your body will be cared for. Your real self, outside the simulation, will be unconscious. You won't remember entering. You won't know it's a dream. Your experience, from your perspective, will be perfect. So why not enter? Why hesitate? The resistance. Because something in you whispers, but it isn't real. Nozick believed this hesitation matters. It means you care about more than how things feel. You want to do things, not just imagine doing them. You want your love to be returned by a real person, not just a program. You want your struggles to mean something, your choices to matter, your life to connect with a world that exists. Not because it's pleasurable, but because it's true. What is a life? The machine offers experience. But is that all a life is? What about growth, failure, pain? Do you want a life without uncertainty, without effort, without consequence? Or does meaning require resistance? Does love matter if it's guaranteed? Does courage matter if the danger isn't real? Would you still be you if everything was scripted to satisfy you? The danger of comfort. The experience machine is more than a thought experiment. It echoes in everyday life. Social media that feeds us curated joy. Entertainment that mimics connection. Digital realities that offer escape from the mess of being alive. More and more, the world gives us ways to simulate meaning without facing it. And we begin to forget what real life feels like. Rough, uncertain, uncontrolled, but real. The final question. Nozick's machine doesn't judge. It offers you peace, pleasure, endless joy. All it asks in return is your surrender, not of your body, but of your authenticity. So, would you trade the real for the ideal? Would you choose the image over the experience? And if the illusion feels better than truth, does that make it enough? The frame problem. A robot stands in a kitchen. Its task: pick up the coffee cup and place it in the sink. Simple? Maybe not. Because before it can act, it must ask, will the cup still be full? Will the table remain where it is? Will gravity behave the same? Will the cup explode? Will the walls vanish? The questions grow, and grow, and grow. The robot chokes on them, because it doesn't know what matters. This is the frame problem. What is it? The frame problem asks, how do you decide what is relevant and what can safely be ignored? When you move through the world, you filter endlessly. You see 1,000 details, but you focus on one. You hear dozens of sounds, but you listen to one. You assume that most things stay the same unless something tells you otherwise. But a machine, even a smart one, doesn't know that. To it, every variable might change. Every irrelevant thing might matter. And so it drowns in infinite consideration. Why it's a problem? Humans don't think this way. You walk into a room and know instantly what matters. A glass is falling. You catch it. A friend looks sad. You notice. A word changes tone. You flinch. You didn't calculate. You just knew. But how? How do you know what to focus on when nothing tells you? No formula, No rules, just instinct. Machines don't have that. AI and the frame. In artificial intelligence, the frame problem is everywhere. A robot asked to fetch a wrench might wonder if the sky has changed, if its hands still work, if the laws of physics still hold. Because unless told what to ignore, it considers everything. And there are infinite things to consider. This isn't about intelligence. It's about context. And context is subtle. The human trick. You frame the world without noticing. You walk into a cafe. You don't think about the ceiling, or the floor, or whether the sugar on the table will vanish mid-sentence. You assume continuity. You filter. And this filtering is the foundation of intelligence. To understand anything, you must ignore almost everything. But no one teaches you how. You just do it. That's the mystery. Relevance is invisible. No one can tell you what will matter in 10 minutes. You have to guess. Sometimes you're right, sometimes you're not. But without that guess, you're paralyzed. And the frame problem reminds us that even understanding requires blind spots. Because to act is to assume. And to assume is to risk being wrong. So tonight, as you move through fading thoughts and your attention slips gently into dream, ask yourself, what did I ignore today that I should have seen? And what did I chase that never mattered? And if your mind had to consider everything, how would it ever choose to move? The Holographic Principle. Imagine standing before a wall. On it, light and shadow dance. Shapes move. Voices echo. A world plays out on the surface. But then someone whispers, the real story isn't on the wall. It's on the edge, at the boundary. What if everything you see, the stars, your body, your thoughts, is just a projection from somewhere else? Not metaphorically, not spiritually, but physically. This is the holographic principle, a theory that suggests our entire universe might be a hologram. Where it comes from? It began with black holes. Physicists like Jacob Bekenstein and Stephen Hawking noticed something strange. The amount of information inside a black hole didn't depend on its volume, but on its surface area. That is, how much you could know about a black hole was related not to how big it was on the inside, but to the size of its outer boundary. Later, in the 1990s, physicist Leonard Susskind and others took this idea further. They proposed, maybe all information in a region of space is encoded on its boundary. Maybe the inside is just a holographic illusion generated from the edges. What does that mean? Think of a hologram. It's a 2D surface that creates the illusion of 3D depth. You tilt it, light bends, and the image seems to move in space. But it's not really in space. The depth is encoded on the surface. Now scale that up to the entire universe. What if your 3D world, your hands, your room, your planet, are all emergent? What if the true reality is painted on a distant edge you can never reach, the universe as a shadow? This echoes Plato's cave. Shadows on the wall mistaken for truth. But it also sounds like science fiction. Are we saying reality is fake? Number, the holographic principle doesn't deny your experiences. It just says they might be encoded differently than they appear. Reality is still real, but its structure might be more like a trick of geometry than a block of stone. The depth you see may be computed from the edge. Why this is not madness? It's not just a metaphor. In string theory and quantum gravity, holography helps solve paradoxes about information, entropy, and black holes. In one famous model, ADS-CFT duality, a universe with gravity in 3D is exactly equivalent to a universe without gravity in 2D. Two descriptions, same physics, different dimensions, one world folded into another. What it says about you. If the universe is a hologram, then you, your thoughts, your life, your memories, may also be encoded in patterns on a boundary. You are not an object inside a space. You are the space. You are the projection. You are the code on the wall. And yet, you feel whole. You feel deep. Because the illusion is perfect. The quiet implication. This principle changes the question. Not, what is the universe made of? But, where is it really happening? Not, who are you? But, where are you stored? And if the truth of everything is written somewhere you'll never touch, then maybe reality is not what's in front of you, but what surrounds you, quietly, from the outside. The liar paradox. Consider a sentence. This sentence is false. Just that. Simple, clear, self-contained. But now, try to believe it. If the sentence is true, then what it says must be the case, that it is false. But if it is false, then what it says isn't true, which means it must be true. And suddenly, you are caught in a loop. Truth collapses into falsity. Falsity confirms truth. Logic eats its own tail. This is the liar paradox, a sentence that cannot be true and cannot be false, and yet insists on being one or the other. A very old problem. The paradox dates back over 2,000 years. It appears in the writings of Epimenides, a Cretan who supposedly said, "All Cretans are liars. If that's true, then he's lying. If he's lying, then it's not true that all Cretans lie." Which means, he might be telling the truth? Versions appear in medieval logic, in Gödel's incompleteness theorems, even in modern computer science and set theory. At its core, it's not just a trick. It's a mirror, held up to the limits of language and certainty. Why it matters. You use language every day. You say what's true. You point at what's false. You trust that words can carry meaning. But the liar shows that some sentences break the system from within. They are grammatical, syntactically sound, yet they contain a poison, a kind of self-reference that logic can't absorb. They are not meaningless. They are not contradictions. They are something worse, undecidable. Truth and self-reference. The paradox arises when language turns inward, when statements talk about themselves. Normally, we describe the world. We say, the sky is blue, or water boils at 100 degrees Celsius. But when we say, this sentence is false, the speaker, the sentence, and the subject become one. The map tries to describe itself. The mirror reflects its own reflection. And in that recursion, something breaks. Truth ceases to behave. Modern versions. In programming, this appears as a crash. Infinite loops, contradictory conditions, functions that call themselves with no end. In logic, it appears as incompleteness. Gödel showed that in any formal system rich enough to express arithmetic, there will be statements that are true, but unprovable. In truth theory, it's a limit case. Do we need new rules? A third value between true and false? Should we outlaw self-reference? Or should we accept that truth, like light, sometimes behaves like a wave, and sometimes like a particle? Living the paradox. You felt this perhaps, when you say, I always lie, or I'm trying not to try, or I'm not thinking about it. Language bends back on itself. You experience contradiction not as theory, but as tension, a knot in the mind, a loop that doesn't close. The Omelas Problem, the cost of a perfect world. Imagine a city. Omelas. It is bright, joyful, free. The sun never offends. The laughter is honest. The people are wise, gentle, and full of life. There is no war, no poverty, no cruelty. Music flows through its streets. Children dance in the dust. The air smells of sweetness and light. It is, in every way, a paradise. But there is a door, and behind it, a child. The secret of Omelas in a basement, dark and locked. A single child sits in filth, alone, starving, confused. The child is never touched, never comforted, never released, and everyone in Omelas knows. At some point in their life, each citizen is told. They are shown the child. They see its misery. They hear its whimpers. And then they're told, the happiness of Omelas depends on this child's suffering. If the child is freed, the city will fall. The joy will vanish. The beauty will rot. Most stay. Most turn away. They cry, they struggle, they rage. Then they return to the sun, to the laughter, to the light. They justify. They say, it's only one. They would not understand freedom. They were born for this. They walk the streets again, quietly complicit, because who would destroy paradise for a single life? But some leave. They see the child. They cannot forget. And one day, without drama, without protest, they walk away, out of the gates, into the unknown, beyond the city, alone. No one stops them. No one knows where they go. But they choose to walk, because they cannot stay in a world built on someone else's pain. What is this problem? The Omelas problem is not fiction. It is a mirror. It asks, how much suffering are you willing to ignore so that you may be happy? What is your phone made of? Who stitched your clothes? Whose hunger made your dinner cheap? We live in cities, bright and free, built on the backs of invisible children. We look away, and then look again. Is it worth it? What does it mean to live a good life in a world where others suffer for your ease? Can a paradise be just if it rests on injustice? Is one child too many, or a necessary cost in a flawed reality? And if you knew, if you truly knew, what pain bought your peace, would you still stay? The choice. There is no villain in Omelas, no tyrant, no war, only the terms, joy for suffering, and the freedom to accept or reject. There are no guards, no locks on the city gates, only the question, can you live with this? So tonight, as your comforts settle around you, and the day softens into sleep, ask yourself, who is the child beneath your world? What price has been paid for your ease? And if you found the door, would you open it? And once you saw inside, would you stay? The Ship of Theseus. There is an old thought experiment, simple at first glance, but like all good paradoxes, it begins as a crack and becomes a chasm. The story goes like this. The Athenians preserved the ship of the hero Theseus. They kept it in the harbor for generations, honoring the vessel that once carried him home. But over time, the wooden planks began to rot, so they replaced them, one by one. First the boards along the side, then the deck, then the mast. Eventually, every single part of the ship was replaced. Not a single original piece remained. And yet, it was still called the Ship of Theseus. It was still revered, still pointed to by name, still thought of as the same object. But is it? Here the paradox emerges. If every part of a thing is changed, is it still the same thing? Where does identity reside? In the materials? In the form? In memory? Let's make it worse. Suppose someone had kept the discarded planks, every original piece, and, in a distant shipyard, reassembled them exactly as they were. Now you have two ships, one made of entirely new material, but continuous with the original in location, use, and public recognition, and one made of the original material, but in a new place, with no institutional continuity. So tell me, which one is the real Ship of Theseus? The question is not trivial, because we are all ships. We are all in constant change. And if identity cannot survive transformation, then what are we? Your body replaces its cells constantly. Your thoughts shift, dissolve, are contradicted and renewed. The person you were at 7 or 17 or 27 is not here anymore. Not entirely. And yet, you say, I. You point to old photographs. You remember old pain, old joy, old mistakes. You claim ownership of a story that is always under revision. So again, what are you? A pattern? A continuity of memory? A name attached to flux? Or is the self just a convenient fiction? A way to navigate a world that demands coherence where none exists? The Ship of Theseus becomes even more provocative in the digital age. What if your mind could be uploaded bit by bit, neuron by neuron, into a machine? And what if your original body were then destroyed? Would you continue? Or would that thing be only a copy, identical in thought, but vacant in essence? And then the darker question. If we cannot say where identity begins or ends, how can we say whether anyone persists at all? Plutarch, who first recorded the story, offered no resolution. Neither did Locke or Hobbes or modern philosophers. Because perhaps it's not a riddle meant to be solved, but a mirror meant to be looked into. The Ship of Theseus asks not only what objects are, but how we belong to ourselves. Whether change is something we undergo or something that erases us. Whether memory is enough. Whether continuity is real. Whether you, as you are right now, can survive your own becoming. So tonight, as your body begins to rest, as your mind drifts between what was and what will be, ask yourself, if you woke tomorrow with every thought slightly changed, every cell slightly newer, every feeling slightly altered, would you still be you? And if not, who is dreaming now? The simulation hypothesis. What if everything around you, the walls, the trees, the sky, your own hands, was not real? Not metaphorically, not psychologically, but literally. What if you were living in a simulation? The idea may sound like science fiction or the plot of a movie. But the question is older than computers. In many ways, it's the modern form of a very old doubt. How do we know the world is real? Descartes asked if a demon could be deceiving us. Plato imagined a cave full of shadows mistaken for truth. Buddhism speaks of Maya, the illusion of appearances. But in 2003, philosopher Nick Bostrom gave the question a modern twist. He proposed what is now called the simulation argument. The core idea. Bostrom's argument is simple and disturbing. He said, at least one of the following must be true. Civilizations like ours never reach a point where they can simulate conscious beings. Civilizations that do reach that point lose interest in running simulations. We are almost certainly living in a simulation. That's it. Only one of those can be false. And if the first two are wrong, if it is possible to simulate consciousness, and if future civilizations do run simulations, then the number of simulated minds would vastly outnumber real ones. And statistically, we are far more likely to be one of the simulations, not the original. In other words, if simulated beings can exist, and if someone, somewhere, is running those simulations, we are probably in one. What would that mean? Imagine you are in a dream, but you don't know it. Everything feels solid. The world follows laws of motion, logic, time. But all of it is running on something, some system, some code. In a simulation, matter is not fundamental. Bits are. You are not made of atoms. You are made of data. Your thoughts are patterns in a vast computational system. And nothing around you exists when you're not looking at it. Because rendering reality takes processing power. And if that's true, who made it? A civilization? An artificial intelligence? A bored teenager in another dimension? And more importantly, do they care? Does it change anything? Here's the most unsettling part. Even if you are in a simulation, you may never be able to prove it. The system could be built to hide itself, like code that deletes traces of its own execution. Even stranger, the simulation could be paused, rewound, or edited without your awareness. Every memory you have could be implanted. Your entire life could be a loop. But here's the deeper question. Would it matter? If your experiences feel real, if your joy and pain, your love and fear, your thoughts and choices, all feel true to you, then does it matter whether they're made of carbon or code? Does reality depend on what things are made of, or on how they are experienced? You might reject the idea. You might say, there's no evidence. And you'd be right. But Bostrom's point is that you don't need evidence, only probability. And that, perhaps, is more disturbing. Because the simulation hypothesis isn't just about virtual worlds. It's about how little we know about what we take for granted. What is a mind? What is time? What is real? So tonight, as your body drifts into sleep and your senses dissolve into dreams, ask yourself, if everything you know is part of a program, does that make it meaningless? Or does that mean someone, somewhere, coded it on purpose? The Sorites Paradox. Imagine a single grain of sand. Tiny, barely there, not a heap, clearly not. Now place another grain beside it, still not a heap. Then another, and another, 100, 200, 300. At some point, you stop counting and start calling it something new, a heap. But where was the line? Where exactly did the grains become the heap? That's the Sorites Paradox, step by step into uncertainty. Sorites comes from the Greek word soros, meaning heap. It's a paradox of vague predicates. It asks, if one grain of sand is not a heap, and adding one grain can't turn a non-heap into a heap, then even 1,000,000 grains should still not be a heap. Because at no point does a single grain seem to cause the transformation. But we know this can't be right. 1,000,000 grains is obviously a heap. One grain is obviously not. And yet, if each step seems harmless, how do we ever cross from not to is? Where is the moment of change? Where does identity begin? Where does it end? Not just sand. The paradox goes beyond deserts. When does a person become bald? When you remove one hair? Or 10? Or 1,000? When does a pile of clothes become a mess? When does night begin? When does youth end? These are not just semantic games. They're questions about how we draw boundaries in a world that flows. We live in gradients, but we think in categories. And that mismatch creates paradox. Why it hurts the brain? You might say, a heap is just whatever we decide it is. But if it's only a decision, then there's no truth, only labels. And if there's no truth, then what are we even talking about? Yet, if there is a truth, some invisible line between heap and non-heap, then where is it? Show it to me. You can't. Because the problem is not in the sand. It's in the concept. Our minds crave clarity, edges, definitions. But reality offers only transitions. The collapse of categories. The Sorites Paradox reminds us. Language is blunt. Reality is subtle. We say rich and poor. But how many dollars makes the difference? We say alive and dead. But what about coma or brain death? We say child and adult. But no birthday ever changed your soul. There is no switch, no buzzer, no moment, only a slope and the illusion of a line. Living in the gray. We try to define things so we can control them. But the Sorites Paradox whispers, your definitions are made of air. Things change slowly, quietly, grain by grain. And one day, you look in the mirror and ask, when did I become this? Not yesterday, not today, somewhere in the in-between. So tonight, as you lie still, grain by grain letting go of the day, ask yourself, how many thoughts make a dream? How many moments make a memory? How many changes make a new self? And if you don't know where the heap begins, maybe the heap was never real at all. The spotlight effect. You walk into a room. You feel it immediately, like heat on the skin. Eyes. You become aware of your shirt, the way you walk, a stain you're sure is visible. A sentence you said 5 minutes ago echoes in your head. You feel exposed, on stage, lit by an invisible spotlight. But here's the truth. No one's really looking, not the way you think. This is the spotlight effect, the tendency to overestimate how much others notice us, watch us, think about us. The illusion of attention. Your world centers on you. You see everything through your eyes. You hear your voice from the inside. You know your mistakes before anyone else can detect them. So it feels natural to assume that others must see what you see. But they don't. They're too busy doing the same thing. Their spotlight is on themselves. Your stain, your awkward phrasing, your nervous laugh. They barely notice. And if they do, they forget within moments. The audience you imagine isn't real. The experiment psychologists once asked students to wear a bright, embarrassing t-shirt into a room of strangers. Afterward, they asked, how many people noticed your shirt? The students guessed, more than half. In reality, only a few. Again and again, the study repeats. You feel seen, but you're mostly invisible. Not because people are cruel, but because they're distracted by their own mirrors. Why it feels so real. The spotlight effect isn't vanity. It's structure. Your brain tracks your actions more closely than anyone else ever will. You remember your stumbles. You replay what went wrong. You magnify it. But the world isn't keeping score. Most people aren't watching. And if they are, they're watching with far less judgment than you think. They see a blur. You see a spotlight. The strange freedom of being ignored. This might sound disappointing. You want to matter. You want to be seen. But there is peace in being unnoticed. There is softness in realizing that your flaws are not front-page news. You're not on stage. You're in the audience. Everyone is. A room full of people watching themselves. Why it matters. This illusion holds many of us hostage. We don't speak. We don't try. We don't dance. We don't start. We don't risk. Because we believe that failure will be remembered forever. But it won't. You are not being recorded. You are not being broadcast. You are not under review. You are passing through the field of other people's attention like light in fog. And that's not sad. That's liberating. Being seen for real. None of this means you are meaningless. It means that when you are seen, truly seen, by someone who listens, who notices, who cares, it means something. Because most of the time, you are invisible. And when someone chooses to pay attention anyway, that attention becomes a gift, not a spotlight, but a candle. So tonight, as you recall the awkward thing you said, or the glance you imagined meant judgment, ask yourself, Was anyone really watching? And if they were, did it matter? And if tomorrow you try again, and stumble again, and laugh again, will the world remember? Or will it simply move on without noticing at all? The Teletransportation Paradox. You step into a machine. It scans your body, every atom, every neuron, every memory. It records you perfectly. Then it destroys your body, cleanly, instantly, painlessly. On the other side of the planet, another machine receives the data. It builds you back, molecule by molecule, cell by cell. A new body, identical, with your memories, your voice, your laugh, your pain. You open your eyes. You step out. You say, it worked. But did it? Who is standing there? Is the person who exits the machine you? They remember your childhood. They love the same people. They finish your sentences. They think they are you. But are they? Or are they just a copy, built from data, stitched together from memory, standing on the grave of the original? If someone builds a perfect replica of a book, is it still the same book? If someone builds a perfect replica of you, is it still you? Or is you already gone? The paradox. The Teletransportation Paradox was made famous by philosopher Derek Parfit. He asked, what makes you you? Is it your body? But that changes constantly. Is it your memory? But memories can fade, twist, or be implanted. Is it your soul? Then where is it? Can it be copied? Or does it vanish when the original body dies? If identity is based on continuity, and teleportation breaks that continuity, then who exactly wakes up on the other side? A fork in the machine. Now imagine this. The machine malfunctions. It scans you, sends the data, rebuilds you on the other side, but fails to destroy the original. Now there are two of you, same memories, same feelings, same claim. I'm the real one. So which one is you? Can two of you be you? Or does identity split? What does it mean to survive? If teleportation feels like death, would you still step in? Would you enter, knowing that you would end, but a perfect version would continue? What does it mean to survive? Is it to feel continuous, or to remain physically intact, or to have your pattern preserved? What matters more, who you are or what comes after you? The mirror of identity. The paradox is not just science fiction. It's a mirror. Because your body is already replacing itself. Your cells regenerate. Your thoughts shift. You forget things. You reinvent yourself. You are already teleporting in slow motion. And yet, you feel continuous. You feel like oneself. But is that continuity real, or just an illusion that helps you sleep? The trolley problem. There is a track, a split in the rails, and a decision to be made. A trolley hurtles forward, uncontrolled. Ahead, on the main track, 5 people are tied down, unable to move. But there is a lever nearby. If you pull it, the trolley will swerve onto a side track where only one person lies. Do you pull the lever? This is the famous trolley problem, a thought experiment in ethics, logic, and moral psychology. It was first proposed by philosopher Philippa Foot in 1967 and later refined by Judith Jarvis Thomson. Its appeal is timeless because it cuts straight to a moral nerve. It removes distance. It removes abstraction. It asks you to stand, quite literally, at the switch. And it whispers, what will you do? Most people, when asked, say, yes. They would pull the lever, sacrifice 1 to save 5. Utilitarian reasoning, the greatest good for the greatest number. But what if we change the setup? Now you are on a bridge above the tracks. The trolley speeds below. There are 5 people in danger. Again. Next to you stands a large man. If you push him off the bridge, his body will stop the trolley. He will die. The 5 will live. Do you push him? Most people say no, even though the math is identical. 1 death, 5 lives saved. Why? Because the manner of the action matters. Because killing and letting die are not the same, even if the outcome is. Because consequences are not everything. Because some acts, even for good ends, feel wrong. The tension between these two intuitions, consequence versus principle, defines much of modern ethics. Are you responsible for what you do, or also for what you allow? If you pull the lever, you are actively redirecting harm. But if you do nothing, are you innocent? And what if the one person on the track is your friend, your child, your mother? Is moral calculus immune to emotion, or does love have to count? These are not questions with clean answers. They're designed to expose fracture lines between instinct and logic, between ethics and empathy. You may never stand at a literal switch, but you make trolley decisions all the time. Every economic policy, every triage in a hospital, every wartime decision. Whose lives matter more? How many can be sacrificed for stability? When does doing nothing become complicity? And in the age of AI and autonomous vehicles, the trolley problem is no longer abstract. If a self-driving car must choose, swerve into a wall and kill the passenger, or hit a pedestrian, what should it do? You are the designer. You are the switch. And now the question is not just personal. It is structural. The trolley problem doesn't have a correct answer. It isn't meant to. Its purpose is to reveal your assumptions, to stretch your intuitions until they snap, to ask, where do you draw the line between choice and murder, between reason and feeling? And what happens when that line isn't clear? So tonight, as the world grows quiet and the tracks in your mind stretch out into the dark, ask yourself, if you heard the rumble of a trolley in the distance and your hand was already on the lever, would you pull? Or would you close your eyes and listen for the sound of your own hesitation? The veil of ignorance. Imagine this. Before you are born, you stand in a room with others. You don't know who you will be. You don't know your gender, your race, your class. You don't know your health, your intelligence, your parents, your country. You know nothing about yourself, except that you will be someone in the world you are about to help design. This is the veil of ignorance, a thought experiment by philosopher John Rawls. Behind the veil, you are asked, what kind of society would you choose if you didn't know your place in it? Why it matters most of us design justice from where we stand. We protect what we have. We justify what benefits us. We assume the world is fair because it has been fair to us. But behind the veil, you can't do that. You might be born poor, or rich, blind, privileged, alone, adored. And so, you design not for yourself, but for anyone, for everyone, for someone you might become. What would you choose? Would you allow extreme wealth if you might be born into poverty? Would you deny health care if you might wake up sick? Would you underfund schools if you might need one to survive? Would you accept discrimination if you didn't know what face you'd wear? Behind the veil, self-interest disappears. Only fairness remains. Justice as fairness. Rawls argued that this is how to define a just society, not by tradition, not by power, but by what rational people would choose if they were stripped of their identities. He called it justice as fairness. Behind the veil, you become everyone, and so you learn what it means to be no one. The tension. It sounds beautiful, even obvious. But step outside the veil, and reality returns. You do know who you are, and you do live in systems that advantage some and abandon others. So the veil becomes not a way to design the world, but a way to question the one you live in now. How much luck do you carry? You didn't choose your body. You didn't choose your parents. You didn't choose your country, your language, your century. And yet, those things shape your fate more than your effort ever will. Behind the veil, you are reminded, so much of who you are is borrowed from luck. And fairness means building a world where luck doesn't become a sentence. Would you accept the risk? The veil of ignorance doesn't ask what world you like. It asks what world you'd accept if the dice were rolled again. If you had to start over, no guarantees, no advantages. Just the knowledge that you could be anyone. And in that moment, you become the most moral version of yourself. Because you design for the many, not the lucky few. So tonight, as you drift beneath the quiet veil of sleep, ask yourself, if you didn't know you'd be you, what kind of world would you wake up in? And if you already live on the side of comfort, what would fairness look like from the other side? Zeno's paradoxes. Imagine a race. Achilles, the great warrior, runs at full speed. Ahead of him, a slow tortoise begins to move. But Achilles gives the tortoise a small head start. He is faster, stronger. He will catch up in seconds. But Zeno says he never will. Because to catch the tortoise, Achilles must first reach the point where the tortoise began. But by then, the tortoise has moved a little farther, so Achilles must reach that next point. But again, the tortoise is ahead. This continues forever, step by step, division by division. Achilles gets closer, but never touches. The logic of motion. It seems absurd. We know Achilles will pass the tortoise, but the logic feels airtight. Before you cross a distance, you must cross half. And before that, half of the half. And so on. An infinite number of steps. And how can you finish an infinite number of things in a finite amount of time? Zeno of Elea, a Greek philosopher from the 5th century BCE, used this and other paradoxes to argue that motion is an illusion. Not slow, not complicated, but impossible. The arrow that never moves. Another of Zeno's paradoxes is simple. An arrow is flying through the air. At any given instant, it occupies one position in space. At that instant, it does not move. It's frozen, caught in time. If every moment is like this, then the arrow is never moving. It is just there in a series of still frames. So what is motion? A collection of non-motion? A blur of instants that never actually move? The stadium Zeno imagined rows of bodies moving past one another. Each moves a distance in a certain time. But when compared to another, they seem to move twice that amount in the same moment. Time and distance collapse into contradiction. And the question returns, how can motion be made of things that do not move? What was Zeno doing? Zeno didn't hate motion. He didn't think walking was fake. He wasn't trolling ancient Greece. He was a student of Parmenides, a philosopher who claimed that change and multiplicity were illusions. Zeno created these paradoxes to defend that view, to show that common sense breaks when pressed hard enough. And for thousands of years, his paradoxes resisted clear answers. What about now? Mathematics gives us tools to respond. We say, yes, there are infinite steps, but their total length converges. Yes, time has instants, but motion is the limit of position across time. Calculus, invented centuries later, resolves the paradox on paper, but the intuition remains strange. You still take infinite steps between here and there, and every moment of your movement is also a stillness. And even with the math, you wonder, how can something infinite fit inside something finite? The feeling of Zeno. You feel this when you're stuck, when you're close, but not quite there, when the goal moves each time you reach it. You take a step, then another, and the finish line feels just out of reach. You are Achilles. The tortoise moves. Time stretches. And though you know the math, you feel the paradox in your chest. Akrasia. Why you act against your own will. You're lying still. The room is quiet. You've done everything you needed to today, or maybe not. Maybe there was something you wanted to do, something you planned, hoped, promised yourself. And yet, you didn't do it. You knew better. You wanted better. And still, you chose something else. Why? What is akrasia? The ancient Greeks had a word for this strange failure of will. Akrasia, the state of acting against your better judgment, knowing what is right and doing the opposite. It's not ignorance. It's not weakness. It's something subtler. You sit with full knowledge, full understanding, and still, your hand moves against you. You scroll. You delay. You indulge. You disappear. And after, regret, shame, questions. Why do I betray myself? Why do I let go of the very thing I want, a divided self? To explain akrasia is to admit something uncomfortable, that you are not one thing. There is the planner, the part of you that dreams, organizes, aspires, and the doer, the one who lives in time, in sensation, in weakness. The planner sets the alarm. The doer hits snooze. The planner imagines a future self, clear, productive, strong. But the doer wants to feel good right now. And both are you. Both are real. Both mean well. But they don't always agree. Time inconsistency. Economists call it time inconsistency. What your future self wants and what your present self does aren't aligned. In the morning, you vow to write. In the afternoon, you scroll endlessly. At night, you swear tomorrow will be different. And the cycle returns. The value of doing the right thing seems smaller when the reward is far away. And temptation, the little now, seems larger, louder, immediate. It is not stupidity. It's how the brain weights value over time. But you feel the ache all the same. Socrates and the strange illusion Socrates believed that no one willingly chooses the worse path. He said, if someone does wrong, it is only because they do not know better. But akrasia challenges this. You do know, and still, you do the thing that harms you. Maybe the truth is this: knowing is not enough. Wanting is not enough. Even believing in yourself is not enough. You must also feel aligned. The weight of desire is not logical. It doesn't care about plans. It rises in the moment, urgent, demanding. You say, I'll eat healthy. Then a smell, a taste, a flash, and suddenly you're elsewhere. Akrasia isn't just a failure of will. It's a flood, a chemical moment where the body drowns the mind. It's not a sin. It's a mismatch between time and want, between identity and impulse, the gentle path. So what do? First, forgive. Akrasia is human. Everyone lives with it, even the wise, even the strong. Then, understand. Ask not, why am I weak, but what am I avoiding? What fear whispers behind this delay? Often, the action we avoid carries more weight than we admit. Fear of failure, fear of change, fear of being seen. Akrasia is the smoke, but fear is the fire. The sleep. Within each act of avoidance is a small forgetting of who we are, a gentle falling asleep while awake, not a nap of the body, but of the will. a soft dream in which the present self wanders away from its own path. But you can return, with breath, with presence, with kindness, awake again, choose again, not because you must, but because you can. Final thought. As you drift into sleep tonight, let go of the weight of failure. Let go of shame. You are not a machine. You are not broken. You are a symphony of selves, each with its own voice, its own tempo. Akrasia is not the end. It's just the noise before the song begins again. Sleep gently. And tomorrow, choose. With softness, not force. With warmth, not punishment. You will get there. And even if you don't, you're still worth the journey. Cotard syndrome. You're lying still. The world is quiet now. No sound, no urgency, just the low hum of your mind. Slowly, gently dissolving. Tonight, we drift into the most silent delusion of all. A thought so still, so dark, that even the mind itself hesitates to touch it. It's called Cotard syndrome, the belief that you are already dead. The living dead. It may sound impossible, but for those affected, it's as real as breath. Cotard syndrome is a rare mental condition where a person becomes convinced that they have died. They believe they no longer exist, that their organs have stopped working, that their blood no longer flows. Some feel they are rotting. Some insist their body is gone, or hollow. Some believe they are in hell, not metaphorically, literally. It's not a metaphor for depression. It is the absence of life, while still being awake. A body without a self. What does it mean to be alive? Is it the beating of a heart? The warmth of skin? The presence of thought? People with Cotards can walk, speak, even make eye contact. They eat or forget to. They sit at the table with family. They speak to doctors and calmly explain that they are no longer alive. Their body functions, but the sense of being, the sense of self, has vanished. The soul has checked out, but left the lights on. Where does it come from? Cotards often appears in severe depression, psychosis, or after trauma. It's more likely in people who withdraw from the world, those who lose the thread between themselves and others. The brain, desperate for coherence, invents an explanation. I feel nothing, so I must be nothing. It's not a scream. It's a whisper. Not fear, but certainty. A chilling peace that says, you don't need to worry anymore. You're already gone. The horror of absence. This syndrome is not loud. It's not chaos. It's silence. No future. No urgency. No emotion. What makes it terrifying is its stillness. Some stop eating. Why nourish a corpse? Some stop moving. Why walk when you are nowhere? Some ask to be buried. Some seek morgues. Some believe they are trapped in a dream after death and ask to be woken up. But there is no alarm, only the long, cold hallway of a mind trying to vanish. Philosophical questions. Cotards opens a strange doorway to questions we're not usually allowed to ask. If a person believes they are dead, but walks, breathes, and speaks, what does it mean to be alive? Are you alive only if you feel alive? Only if you want things? Only if you care? If consciousness can persist without belief in self, then maybe self is just a useful illusion, a shadow we carry through waking life. Cotard strips that shadow away, and what's left is terrifyingly calm. Dream logic. As you drift into sleep, your body will feel distant, your thoughts will slow, your sense of self will dissolve. This is normal. Every night, we disappear, and in the morning, we return. Most of us. Cotards feels like sleep, without waking, a dream of death that lingers into daylight. And in that dream, there is no grief, no loss, just nothing. Not madness, just silence. People with Cotards are not insane. They are not violent. They are not lost in chaos. They are lost in emptiness. And that may be harder to treat. Because how do you argue with nothing? How do you convince someone to care when they believe caring is no longer possible? To pull them back, you must give them something stronger than logic. Connection, warmth, proof, not that they live, but that they matter. So tonight, as your eyes close and your thoughts drift deeper, imagine for a moment what it would mean to forget that you are alive. Not in fear, but in silence. Would you miss the sound of your own thoughts? Would you forget your name? Would you wait to be awakened, or be content to float? Cotard's syndrome is not about death. It's about disconnection. From self, from feeling, from the rhythm of life. Sleep well. Hold on to that rhythm. Let the soft pulse of being guide you into dreams. And if you wake tomorrow, know that you're still here, still warm, still breathing, still real. Phantom limbs and the self that persists. You're lying still. Your body relaxes. You feel your arms, your legs, your shape against the sheets. But what if you lost a part of yourself and still felt it? Not as memory, but as presence. Tonight, we explore the strange persistence of self through phantom limbs. Not just a neurological oddity, but a question. What am I if I still feel what is no longer there? What is a phantom limb? A phantom limb is the vivid sensation that an amputated part of the body is still present. Not imagined, not symbolic, felt, physically, sometimes painfully. People report feeling fingers curl, nails itch, muscles cramp, in hands that are no longer there. Toes ache, knees burn, even though the limb is gone. The body forgets to forget. The map remains. The territory is missing. The brain's body inside your brain. There is a map of you, a silent image, made not of mirrors, but of neurons. This body schema doesn't update quickly. Even if the arm is gone, its ghost still lives in the cortex. And that ghost moves. You feel it move. You feel it spasm. You feel it curl toward nothing. The body you think you have isn't the body you live in. It's the one your brain still believes in. A memory with nerves. Phantom limbs blur the line between memory and presence. They are memories that behave like reality. A pain that comes from no source. A sensation without a signal. A feeling that floats in the absence of flesh. It's not just that the limb was lost. It's that the self refused to let go. And maybe that's what identity is. Not what's there, but what refuses to vanish. The shape of absence. Imagine your hand is gone, but you still reach. Your foot is gone, but it still itches. Absence takes form. Nothing becomes something. And the brain listens to silence as if it were touch. This is more than biology. This is phenomenology. We do not experience the world as it is, but as we are wired to feel it. And sometimes, that wiring lingers long after the wire is cut. Who are you without you? What else persists after it's gone? A person, a voice, a memory, a habit. Phantom limbs hint at a deeper truth, that the form of the self is more stable than the material. Your identity isn't carved in your body. It's painted in your perception. And that painting takes time to fade. Sometimes it never does. Phantom selves. Maybe you've lost parts of yourself too. Not limbs, but moments. Old versions. Old roles. Old relationships. And yet they ache. They twitch in dreams. They stir when you're still. You think, I shouldn't feel this anymore. but you do. Not because you're broken, but because something in you still remembers how it once was. Phantom selves. Sleep and disintegration. As you drift into sleep, you begin to dissolve. The body loosens. The boundaries blur. Your foot may fade. Your hands vanish. Your thoughts untie. And yet you persist, not as form, but as presence. The dreamer survives the dream, even when the limbs fall away. Final reflection. Phantom limbs remind us that the self isn't just physical. It's patterned, inscribed in sensation, in memory, in expectation. And those patterns echo, even in absence. So tonight, if something inside you twitches, something that should be gone, don't panic. It's just the self saying, I still remember. Sleep gently. The map is still here, even if the road is gone. The Capgras Delusion. You're lying in bed. The lights are low. Your thoughts slow down, soft like falling leaves. Tonight, let's drift into a quiet corner of the human mind. A strange delusion where reality slips and the familiar becomes unfamiliar. It's called the Capgras Delusion. Imagine looking at someone you love deeply, your partner, your mother, your child, and being absolutely certain they are an imposter. They look the same. They speak the same. They remember everything the real person would. But something is missing. A warmth, a presence. The invisible connection is gone. Capgras delusion is a rare psychological condition where a person believes that a loved one has been replaced by an identical copy. This isn't a fantasy or dream. It's a fixed belief. To them, the real person is gone. Why does this happen? Doctors believe it stems from a disconnection in the brain, specifically between the area that recognizes faces and the part that generates emotional response. In a healthy brain, seeing a loved one triggers both systems. You look like my father, and I feel warmth, trust, safety. But in Capgras, only the visual recognition works. Emotion stays silent, so the brain fills in the gap. If I see them, but don't feel anything, this must not be them. The result is deeply unsettling. A world where your closest people feel like strangers wearing masks. Beyond neuroscience, what makes someone real to you? Is it their appearance, their voice, or is it something deeper, the invisible emotional bond? Capgras reveals that recognition isn't just logic. It's not just facts. It's feeling. We don't truly see people with our eyes. We recognize them with our emotions. When that feeling goes missing, our reality unravels. We think of ourselves as rational, but Capgras whispers that our world depends on fragile emotional threads we never think about, until they break. A mirror to ourselves. This delusion invites darker questions. If someone can look, speak, and act exactly like themselves, yet still feel like an imposter, then what truly defines identity? And if another sees you without that emotional spark, would you still feel like you? Capgras turns love into doubt, closeness into distance, recognition into suspicion. It shows us that our world is built not just on logic, but on fragile connections. We say, I know you, but do we mean I feel you? And if the feeling fades, does the knowing fade too? The dreamlike nature of sleep. As you begin to drift off, notice how your dreams work. Faces appear, some familiar, some strange, some in between. You often recognize people, but they say odd things, act in strange ways, stand in places they don't belong. Capgras is like that, but during waking life. It's a waking dream, a dream with open eyes. Perhaps this is why sleep feels comforting. In dreams, we accept the strange. We welcome the shifting identities. We trust even when things feel off. Maybe Capgras is just a dream that forgot to end. A gentle conclusion. Capgras Delusion isn't just a clinical oddity. It's a quiet, haunting reminder of how much we rely on emotion to make the world feel real. Without that spark, even love feels artificial. Even family seems distant. Even the mirror can feel like someone else. So as you fall asleep, remember, reality is not made of shapes or sounds. It's made of feelings, subtle, warm, fragile. Sleep well. And if you dream of a familiar face, may it be real to you for just a little while. The dark room argument. You're lying in this dark room. No lights, no sounds, no expectations, just stillness. And strangely, it's comfortable. No surprises, no pain, no effort. But ask yourself, is this peace, or is it a kind of surrender? Tonight, let's talk about a strange idea in philosophy and neuroscience. A thought experiment that questions why we act at all. It's called the dark room argument. Predictive brains. Modern neuroscience suggests your brain isn't just reacting to the world, it's constantly predicting it. Every second, your brain generates models of what's about to happen. It compares those predictions with reality and adjusts itself based on the difference, the prediction error. Less surprise equals less error equals a satisfied brain. This is called predictive processing, and it turns everything upside down. Your brain doesn't crave stimulation. It craves confirmation. It wants its story of the world to be right. So what's the problem? Now imagine this. If your brain wants less prediction error, then wouldn't it seek the most predictable state of all? A dark room. No noise, no movement, no change, nothing unexpected, nothing new, just pure errorless existence. That's the dark room argument. If we're prediction machines, shouldn't we want total silence? Shouldn't we crave sensory death? But we don't. Or do we? A comfortable void. We say we want meaning, challenge, stimulation. But we often act differently. We scroll endlessly. We retreat into familiar routines. We stay in jobs we hate, relationships that numb, habits that dull. Maybe we do seek the dark room, not literally, but emotionally. A world where nothing surprises us, where we can disappear into sameness. The dark room isn't a place, it's a pattern, anxiety versus boredom. The brain hates surprise, but it also hates stillness. So it dances between two fears, too much change and not enough. That's the human condition, a tug of war between anxiety and boredom, between noise and numbness. Too much chaos and we panic. Too much calm and we decay. We don't want truth. We want just enough illusion to stay upright. Meaninglessness, as medicine, some philosophers say, the absence of meaning can be a comfort. No pressure, no destiny, no obligation. In a meaningless world, you don't have to chase greatness, you just exist. The dark room becomes a haven, a rejection of noise, a quiet rebellion. Nothing matters, we say, and feel strangely free, not happy, but free. Do we escape or return? Of course, not everyone stays in the dark. Some leave. They embrace uncertainty. They seek novelty, growth, risk. They tolerate prediction errors because they believe something lies beyond. Others return to the dark room again and again. Not because they're weak, but because it's warm, quiet, familiar. Not every escape is progress. Not every silence is failure. Sleep is a kind of room. As you lie here in your own dark room, think of how sleep resembles this idea. No questions, no tasks, no input, just the slow hum of a brain free from prediction. dreams, strange, weightless errors float by, and the self softens. In sleep, we surrender the need to be right, to know, to act. It's the only time we let go without guilt. Final reflection. So, do we seek truth? Or do we just want the noise to stop? Do we chase life or run from surprise? Perhaps the dark room isn't a mistake, but a mirror, showing us that sometimes the highest desire is not to grow, not to change, but simply to stop, to rest, to dissolve, to breathe without answering anything. Sleep well. Tonight, there are no errors. The Phenomenology of Hallucinations, how the mind sees what isn't there you're lying still. The room is quiet, nothing moves, and yet you feel watched. A shape flickers at the edge of your vision. A sound, not loud, but present. You close your eyes, still there. Tonight we drift into that uncertain place, where perception bends, where certainty melts, and the mind creates a world from fragments. Let's talk about hallucinations, not as madness, not as illness, but as experience. Not just seeing things. When people hear the word hallucination, they imagine ghosts, voices, false visions. But hallucination is more than that. It's the presence of experience without external input. It's not imagining, it's perceiving. Real to the senses, but not caused by the world. And it happens more than you think. Everyday ghosts. Close your eyes. Do you ever see shapes, sparks, moving patterns? You hear your name whispered, but no one called you. You feel your phone vibrate, but it didn't. You glimpse a shadow, but it's not there. These are micro-hallucinations, tiny errors, the brain guessing, filling in gaps. And most of the time, you don't even notice. You think you saw, you think you heard. And then, it fades. Reality corrects itself. Mostly. The brain is a generator. We think the brain is a receiver, but it's also a projector. It builds reality by predicting what should be there. And sometimes, it gets ahead of itself. It expects a face in the dark, and so it paints one. It expects a whisper in silence, and so it plays one. In isolation, in sleep deprivation, in grief, in fear, the projector runs wild, not because it's broken, but because it's desperate to understand. Phenomenology, experience itself. Phenomenology is the study of how we experience, not whether it's true, but how it feels. And hallucinations are a masterclass in experience. They show you how the brain constructs presence. You see a figure in the doorway. You feel its gaze. Your heart races. But no one is there. Still, the fear is real. The perception is real. The experience is real, even if the object is not. Dreaming while awake. Hallucinations are like waking dreams. The same parts of the brain light up. The same logic-defying images emerge. In dreams, we accept the absurd. A door opens into a forest. A cat speaks. We fall through air and land in a memory. We believe it, until we wake. Hallucinations are dreams that don't wait for sleep. And maybe, consciousness is less solid than we like to think. The role of emotion hallucinations aren't neutral. They're shaped by your emotions. Fear breeds shadows. Loneliness creates voices. Longing summons ghosts of people we miss. The brain doesn't just show you something. It shows you what your soul is asking for, or what it fears most. In this way, hallucinations aren't lies. They're symbols, projected pain, unspoken grief, unprocessed memory. The mind speaks through images when words fail. Are they real? That's the question, isn't it? If you see something, and it changes your behavior, your body reacts, your thoughts spiral. Does it matter whether it exists outside of you? A hallucination may not be external, but it is real in its effects, real enough to scare, to comfort, to transform. Sometimes reality isn't what's there. It's what's felt, the threshold of sleep. As you lie here, you may begin to feel that gentle strangeness at the edge of sleep. Sounds grow distant. Images bubble behind your eyelids. A soft vibration. A shifting shadow. This is the hypnagogic state, where hallucination becomes natural, expected, even welcome. It's the threshold between waking and dreaming, between certainty and surrender. Final reflection. Hallucinations remind us, you don't perceive the world. You perceive a version of it filtered through memory, emotion, expectation. So as you begin to drift, don't fear the shadows. Don't cling to clarity. Let yourself dissolve gently into the soft mist of unknowing. Sleep well. And if something whispers to you tonight, just listen. It may only be your mind saying hello from the other side of itself. Hyperobjects. You're lying still. The room is dark. The edges of your body begin to blur. And somewhere outside this room, something continues, something vast, something you can't touch, but that touches you. Tonight, let's talk about hyperobjects, entities so large, so spread out in time and space that we can't fully grasp them. But they are real, and they shape us, quietly, endlessly. What is a hyperobject? The term was coined by philosopher Timothy Morton. A hyperobject is not just big, it's beyond comprehension. It's an object, but it defies locality. You can't point to it. You can't step outside it. You're inside it, always. Examples? Global warming, radiation from nuclear waste, the internet, capitalism, plastic, deep time, human history, your own unconscious. You can't hold them. You can't finish them. But they're here. You breathe them, live inside them, sleep under their weight. Too big to feel. Hyperobjects exist across scales of time and space that humans aren't built to perceive. We feel rain. We don't feel climate. We feel screen time. We don't feel the internet. We feel stress. We don't feel the economy. But all of those are hyperobjects, systems so large and tangled that we can only sense them in fragments. Like blindfolded travelers touching a beast we'll never fully see. Sticky and viscous hyperobjects are sticky. You can't walk away from them. Once you notice them, you feel them everywhere. You start to see signs, unseasonal heat, algorithmic ads, plastic in a river, the taste of microwaved oil. They follow you. They leak into thought, into language, into dream. You try to forget, but forgetting is inside the object too. They distort time. Hyperobjects don't live in our timelines. Some, like climate change, stretch across centuries. Some, like nuclear radiation, will outlast civilization. Some, like digital surveillance, move faster than we can think. You try to respond, but your actions feel tiny. The scale is off. You recycle a bottle and a continent burns. You post a thought and it disappears into the feed, or resurfaces 10 years later, or haunts you. There is no before, no after, only the vast, slow now. You are inside it. You are not outside the hyperobject. You are not watching it. You are within it, like a fish in water, like a dreamer in dream. You are shaped by it before you can question it. You breathe plastic. You think with algorithms. You speak through systems you didn't design. And still, you say, this is normal. But is it? The invisible weight. Sometimes you feel it. A vague unease. A dread you can't name. You wake up exhausted. You scroll and feel less alive. It's not personal. It's the weight of the object. too big for your senses, too slow for your thoughts, too constant to see, and still, it moves through you. Artifacts of scale. You try to measure it. Graphs, data, maps, infographics. But numbers can't hold meaning. They describe. They do not feel. A hyperobject isn't an idea. It's a presence, a pressure on the soul. And the harder you try to contain it, the more it seeps into places you didn't expect, like language or dreams or love. Sleep and hyperobjects. As you fall asleep, you might feel it again. That slow pressure, that vastness you can't name. Let it be. You don't have to solve it. You don't have to hold it. Hyperobjects are not monsters. They are truths, too big for the mind, but not for the body. Let your breath soften. Let the scale recede. You are not responsible for holding the world. Just rest. Final reflection. Hyperobjects remind us that we are small, but not meaningless. We are inside things we cannot see, and that is okay. You don't have to comprehend everything to be part of it. You are part of history, part of systems, part of meaning, even when it's invisible. Sleep well. The object remains. But for now, you don't have to. The Anthropic Principle and the Impossibility of Non-Existence. You're lying in the dark. The room is silent. Time softens. And somewhere, in the long history of the cosmos, a star blinked. And now you are here, blinking back. Tonight we talk about a strange thought, that you exist because you must, and that maybe your very presence makes non-existence impossible. This is the Anthropic Principle. What is the Anthropic Principle? At first glance, it sounds obvious. You are here. So of course the universe allows for life. If it didn't, you wouldn't be here to notice. But the more you sit with it, the stranger it becomes. Why does the universe allow for you? Why are the laws of physics so precisely tuned that life, and your life, is possible? Why should reality make observers at all? And what does it mean that you're aware of existing? A universe built for witnesses. The Anthropic Principle suggests we see the universe this way because only this kind of universe can have beings who observe it. If gravity were slightly stronger, or the charge of electrons slightly weaker, stars would never have formed. Atoms wouldn't bind. Time would collapse or stretch in ways hostile to thought. But instead, everything is just right, balanced, delicate, unlikely. So the question emerges, did the universe produce you? Or did you somehow select this universe by existing in it? The observer problem. In quantum physics, the observer effect says that measurement changes reality. A particle is a wave until it is watched. Then it becomes a point. What if existence itself depends on being witnessed? What if the universe needs observers to resolve its own equations? Then you are not an accident. You are the mirror the universe holds up to itself. Not special, but necessary. Could there be nothing? You might ask, why is there something instead of nothing? It's a fair question, but maybe it's the wrong one. Because if there were truly nothing, there would be no one to notice, no mind, no thought, no time. And in that sense, non-existence is unobservable. It cannot be felt. It cannot be remembered. It cannot be asked about. So every time you wonder, could there have been nothing, you prove that there is something. And maybe that's all that matters. Consciousness as a filter. Perhaps you are not in the universe. Perhaps you are a lens through which the universe folds into awareness. A filter that sifts from all possible realities only those where consciousness arises. You are the narrowing point, the bottleneck, the answer to the question posed by physics itself. Can this be known? You say, yes, I am here. And the universe echoes, so I am. You are always going to be another view, says this. In an infinite field of possibilities, your existence was guaranteed. Eventually, in some pocket of space, conditions would be right. Molecules would dance, eyes would open, questions would form. And those questions would include, why me? Why here? Why now? But perhaps there's no why, only when, only that. You are not the meaning. You are the emergence, sleep, and the return to nothing now. You lie here, on the edge of sleep, and it feels like you are slipping into nothing. But it isn't true. Sleep is not absence. It is quiet continuity. Your thoughts drift, but something persists. Even in your deepest unconsciousness, the body breathes. The universe flows through you. Reality continues to notice itself, even as you dissolve. Final reflection. You are not outside the universe. You are not inside it. You are it, folded into a moment of awareness. The Anthropic Principle doesn't say you are important. It says, your presence is not meaningless. You are not a guest in someone else's system. You are the flicker that proves the system runs. So tonight, as your mind quiets, rest in the thought that non-existence is not your burden to solve. You are here. And that's enough. Sleep well. The universe is watching itself through you. The Anti-Natalism Argument, David Benatar's view of birth as harm. You're lying still, breathing gently. The world is quiet now. And maybe you wonder, was it good to be born? Or just inevitable? Tonight, we explore a dark yet thoughtful idea, that to be born is not a gift, but a harm. This is the argument of philosopher David Benatar. And whether or not you agree, it offers a mirror held up to life itself. What is antinatalism? Antinatalism is the belief that coming into existence is always a net negative. Not because life is always awful, but because non-existence never suffers. If you are never born, you never feel pain. You never miss joy, because you never knew it. But if you are born, pain is guaranteed. Confusion is guaranteed. Death is guaranteed. Birth, then, is not neutral. It is the entry point into harm. Benatar's asymmetry. Benatar offers a simple thought experiment. The presence of pain is bad. The presence of pleasure is good. The absence of pain, when no one exists, is good. The absence of pleasure, when no one exists, is not bad. See the twist? In non-existence, there is no one to be deprived. So choosing not to bring someone into the world does no harm, only prevents pain. But bringing someone into the world guarantees suffering, even if it's balanced by joy. You didn't choose this. You didn't choose to exist. You didn't weigh the options. You weren't offered a vote. You were thrown into life, as Heidegger might say. And once here, you must navigate fear, loss, conflict, and death. Antinatalism asks, if you wouldn't force life on someone who begged not to suffer, then why create someone who can't even say no? But what about joy? Yes, life contains joy, laughter, love, music, beauty. But antinatalism doesn't deny that. It simply says, avoiding suffering matters more than producing pleasure, because pleasure is a bonus, but pain is a burden. And when you create life, you roll the dice. You risk agony, despair, mental illness, violence, loss. And that risk was never asked for. The silence of the unborn. There are countless people who could have existed, but never did, and none of them suffer. None cry out. None miss the sun or the sea or the sound of a loved one, because they never were. Anti-natalism finds peace in that. A gentle absence. No fear, no hurt, no waiting for the end. Just non-harm. Is this nihilism? Number Benatar isn't saying life is meaningless. He's saying it's filled with involuntary harm, and that choosing not to create life may be the most compassionate act of all. Not out of hate for life, but out of deep respect for how difficult existence truly is. It's not despair. It's caution. It's mercy. What if you're already here? You might think, but I'm alive. Isn't this argument an insult to me? Not at all. Benatar would say, your life has value because you exist. But it didn't need to start. You can find joy. You can create meaning. You can love. But none of that erases the fact that you never asked to be born. And that matters. Sleep as a metaphor. As you drift towards sleep, consider this. Sleep is a pause, a soft quiet, a little forgetting. It's not death, but it reminds us that non-experience is not frightening. We return from it each time without pain. Maybe this is why sleep feels like peace, a rehearsal for absence that harms no one. Final reflection. Anti-natalism is not for everyone. It's not a demand, not a command, just a perspective. A voice in the night saying softly, perhaps not existing is kinder than we ever dared admit. But you are here, and that too is real. So while you're here, be gentle to others, to yourself, to those who never came. Sleep well. You didn't ask to be born, but tonight you can choose to rest. The philosophical implications of Prions. You're lying in bed, quiet, still. Your thoughts drift like smoke. You feel real. You remember who you are. But what if a single twisted protein, smaller than thought, could undo all of that? Tonight, we explore the horror and mystery of prions and what they reveal about memory, identity, and the mind. What are prions? A prion is not a virus, not a bacteria, not even alive. It's just a misfolded protein, a shape, a wrong pattern. But this tiny shape can infect your body, not by growing, but by changing the shape of other proteins, copying its error. And if those proteins live in your brain, you change, you forget, you twitch, you stop recognizing faces, you forget language, you stop being you. A body still breathes, but the mind melts. Mad cows and quiet collapse prions cause diseases like Creutzfeldt-Jakob, Kuru, fatal familial insomnia, and more famously, mad cow disease. They incubate silently for years. Then, one day, they begin their quiet work. Neurons unravel, personality disintegrates, sleep becomes impossible, laughter becomes screaming, thought disappears. No immune response, no fever, just erosion, like a candle burning inward. A protein that erases the soul. Philosophers have long asked, what is the self? Some say it is memory, others say language, or reason, or continuity. But what if all of these can be unmade by a single molecular shape? A twisted protein with no will, no plan, no malice. And yet, it can undo love, undo history, undo awareness. What kind of self can be erased by a misfold? The mind is meat prions confront us with a brutal idea. Your consciousness depends on protein structure. Your laughter, your beliefs, your sense of right and wrong are built on molecular patterns. Not poetry, not spirit, just architecture. If that pattern warps, you vanish. Not in fire, not in violence, but in confusion. This is not metaphor, it's biology, and yet it feels like philosophy. Echoes of Kuru. In Papua New Guinea, the four people once practiced funerary cannibalism. Out of love, they consumed the brains of the dead. They didn't know they were passing along a prion. The result was kuru, a disease that led to trembling, laughing fits, and cognitive collapse. They called it the laughing death. A cultural act of grief became a biological curse. And again, we ask, what is memory? What is tradition? When a gesture of love destroys the mind. Identity is fragile. You like to think you are stable, that you is a fixed thing. But Prions whisper, you are structure, you are pattern, you are repeatable chemistry. One shift, and the cathedral of thought becomes a collapsing house. Is this terrifying? Yes, but it is also grounding. You are real, not mystical, not floating. You are here, in tissue, in blood, in shape, and maybe that's enough. Sleep and structural drift. As you fall asleep, your brain changes shape. Waves slow, pathways rewire, synapses relax. It's safe, it's gentle, but it reminds us, even in sleep, the structure of mind shifts. Each night, you forget a little. Each dream, you dissolve, yet you return. Usually, final reflection. Prions are not monsters. They are not evil. They are a reminder that even the deepest self is built on matter, that memory lives in structure, that love and story and thought depend on fragile folds. So tonight, as you lie still, be grateful for the patterns that hold, for the shape of your mind, for the invisible architecture that lets you say, I am still here. Sleep gently. The self remains. For now. The principle of explosion. From one falsehood, all logic dies. You're lying in the dark, breathing softly, mind slowing, and somewhere in the old halls of reason, a small crack appears. Just one, barely visible, a falsehood, and then everything collapses. Tonight we talk about a strange rule in logic, one that sounds like madness but is mathematically true. From a contradiction, anything follows. This is the principle of explosion. The core idea. Let's say you accept something false, just one false thing. Suppose you claim, the sky is blue and the sky is not blue. That's a contradiction. And in classical logic, once you've allowed even one contradiction, you can prove anything. Anything at all. You could prove that pigs can fly, that 2 + 2 = 7, that the moon is made of music, that nothing is everything. Because once logic explodes, truth becomes meaningless. Why this happens? Logic is built on inference. If A is true and A implies B, then B must also be true. But with a contradiction, you can build any implication. It's like a virus in the system. One falsehood opens a back door into everything. This isn't a bug. It's a feature of how rigid logic really is. It's precise, but unforgiving. A thought experiment. Imagine a courtroom. A witness says, I was in Paris at the time. And also, I was not in Paris at the time. The contradiction is obvious. You don't just question this part. You begin to question everything they say. If they can say A and not A, why believe anything? Logic agrees. Once contradiction is allowed, you can't trust the system. It becomes noise. Philosophy as collapse. The principle of explosion is terrifying because it tells us something uncomfortable. Truth must be clean, without contradiction, without slippage. Otherwise, truth dies. And that's not just abstract. Whole ideologies, religions, belief systems, they crumble when contradiction takes root. And yet, humans live in contradiction every day. But we don't explode. Do we? We believe in justice, but ignore injustice. We believe in love, but hurt those we love. We believe in reason, but act from impulse. By classical logic, our minds should be on fire, exploding endlessly. But somehow, We continue. So maybe the human mind doesn't follow clean logic. Maybe we survive because we accept contradiction, quietly, daily, like air. Paraconsistent logic. Some philosophers and mathematicians have tried to fix this. They build paraconsistent systems, logic that can tolerate contradiction without falling apart. These systems say, okay, maybe A and not A are both true, but that doesn't mean everything is. It's messy, it's strange, but it reflects life. Because real minds are not clean rooms. They're haunted houses, worn and illogical, but still standing. Sleep and the collapse of meaning. As you drift into sleep, your brain loosens its grip on logic. Dreams are contradictions. You're in two places at once. You know things you never learned. You speak to people who are dead and believe it, and it doesn't explode. You accept it. You float. Maybe that's a kind of wisdom, a softness that logic doesn't allow. Final reflection. The principle of explosion says, protect your truths, or lose all meaning. But the mind says, I can hold the broken pieces, and still walk. So tonight, as thoughts soften and contradictions melt into dreams, don't fear the explosion. There is strength in imperfection. There is reason in brokenness. Sleep well, even if part of you says you are not asleep. That's okay. The silence of the infinite cosmos, listening for a voice that never speaks. You're lying still, the air is quiet, your thoughts slow. Above you, the sky continues, black, endless, eternal. And beyond that sky, more silence. A silence so vast, so deep, it might not end. Tonight, we drift into that silence, not to fear it, but to understand it. Let's talk about the infinite cosmos and the silence that surrounds everything we are. A universe without reply. We've sent signals into space. We've listened for echoes. We've built telescopes that stare across billions of light years. We've waited and waited. And what we've heard, mostly, is silence. No answers, no messages, no whisper of intelligence. Only the hum of stars, the flicker of galaxies, and the cold breath of dark matter. The Fermi Paradox. The universe is ancient. It is vast. There are billions of stars, with billions of planets. So where is everyone? This is the Fermi Paradox, the question that haunts every late-night thinker. With so many chances, why is the universe so quiet? Is it because we are first or last, or just ignored? Or is silence the only possible sound in a universe this large? Silence as a message. Perhaps silence is the message. Not absence, but restraint. Not emptiness, but calm. Perhaps we're not being answered because the cosmos doesn't speak in words. It speaks in light, in entropy, in rhythm. It speaks through the movement of comets, the dance of gravity, the birth and death of stars. And maybe we're just not fluent yet. Are we alone? It's the question we whisper when we look up. Not just, is there life? But, is someone else thinking? Is someone else watching? But the cosmos replies, in windless void, in cosmic background radiation, in light so old it began before Earth had oceans. And we feel small, not erased, just quieted. The infinite is indifferent. The stars do not judge. The nebulae do not sing. The void does not mourn. The infinite cosmos does not care what you believe, what you build, what you fear. And yet, you care. You wonder. You reach. Is that not something? To be a flame that flickers in a windless universe. To burn even when no one sees. The human need for echo. We write stories, send probes, build radio arrays, search spectrums, cry out across the centuries. We don't want to be answered. We want to be known, to not vanish into the silence. But the universe teaches a strange truth. Even unacknowledged, you are real. Even alone, you are here. Even in the silence, you exist. Sleep and the great darkness. As you drift off, you may feel it, that faint hum of nothing. No noise, no task, no reply. But sleep, too, is a kind of silence, a return to inner space. And in that darkness, you don't disappear. You reorganize, you dream. Even when no one watches, the dreaming continues. Final reflection. The silence of the cosmos is not a punishment. It is the natural state of a universe without expectation. We add the questions. We add the longing. We ask the sky to speak, and it remains sky. But still, we look, and that act, the looking, is beautiful. You are not erased by silence. You are shaped by it. Sleep well. The universe is quiet tonight. But so are you, and that is enough. The Baader-Meinhof Phenomenon. You learn a new word, maybe in a book, maybe from a stranger's mouth. It feels unfamiliar, odd. You pause, note it, then move on. But then, it shows up again, later that day, in a headline, in a song, on a billboard, then again, and again. Suddenly, it feels like the word is everywhere, following you, whispering from corners. But it was always there. You just weren't listening. This is the Baader-Meinhof Phenomenon, also known as frequency illusion. What it is? It happens like this. You notice something new. Then you start seeing it everywhere. You don't know if the world changed, or if you did. Maybe it's a car model, a symbol, a name, a strange phrase. One encounter opens a door, and now the world won't stop knocking. Why it happens? Your brain filters information. Every moment, your senses collect more data than you could ever handle. So your mind learns to ignore what doesn't seem important, until something new appears. Then, attention spikes. Relevance is assigned. A pattern forms. And suddenly, what was once noise becomes signal. It's not magic. It's cognitive bias. And yet, it feels magical. Pattern-hungry minds. Your brain is built to find connections, even when none exist. This is why we see faces in clouds, why we hear meaning in static, why we believe in signs, coincidences, synchronicities. We don't just see patterns. We crave them. They give shape to chaos. They create narrative. They make the world feel knowable. And sometimes, they deceive. The loop of awareness. Once something enters your mental frame, you begin feeding it attention, and attention amplifies presence. It's not that the world changed. It's that your mind now picks out what it used to ignore. The word isn't louder. You're just listening closer. The signal isn't new. The antenna has shifted. Baader-Meinhof? Really? The name comes from a strange place. A man in the 90s noticed he kept seeing Baader-Meinhof, the name of a German militant group, after learning it for the first time. He joked about it. Others related. The name stuck. Later, scientists gave it a more precise label, frequency illusion. But the original name feels better, because it sounds like something that watches you back. What it tells us about ourselves. This phenomenon is a mirror. It reminds us that reality is not just what's there, but what we notice. And what we notice is shaped by what we've seen. The world does not change because of a word. You change, and the world follows. Cognitive dissonance. You say you value honesty, but you lie. You say you want health, but you smoke. You say you love someone, but your eyes wander. And then you feel it, that pressure in the chest, that subtle tension behind your thoughts. Not loud, not painful, but real. A crack between what you believe and what you do. This is cognitive dissonance. the discomfort of contradiction, the self at war. You want to see yourself as good, coherent, consistent. But life is messy. You take shortcuts. You justify things. You change your tune. And when your actions no longer match your values, your mind fights back. It whispers, "This isn't so bad. Everyone does it. They deserved it." It's complicated. You bend your beliefs to protect your self-image. You adjust the mirror to avoid seeing the crack. The classic experiment. In 1959, psychologists ran a simple study. They gave people a boring task, then paid them either $1 or $20 to tell someone else it was fun. Those paid $20 had a reason to lie. They felt no tension. But those paid $1 had no excuse. They had to believe they weren't lying. So what did they do? They changed their belief. They convinced themselves the task wasn't so bad. Because it's easier to change your mind than to admit you sold your honesty for $1. How it shapes us. Cognitive dissonance drives much of our behavior. It's why we defend decisions after regret. Why we cling to beliefs when shown evidence. Why we stay in relationships that make us miserable. We want to feel aligned. We want to feel whole. So we patch contradictions with stories, and slowly we become those stories. The trap. This dissonance is uncomfortable, but it's not always bad. It's a sign of self-awareness. It means your values are alive. But when ignored, it turns corrosive. You become hollow, acting out patterns you no longer believe in, justifying a self you've stopped being. And the worst part? You might not even notice, because the stories are soothing. They keep the mirror intact. Freedom through friction. But there's another way. Let the tension rise. Feel the dissonance. Ask, why do I say one thing and do another? Don't excuse it. Don't cover it. Just sit with it and let it burn away what no longer fits. Not all conflict is failure. Some is growth. Gödel's incompleteness, the truth that cannot be proved. Imagine a perfect system, flawless, logical, self-contained. Every truth can be proved. Every proof can be checked. No contradictions, no missing pieces. Mathematics dreamed of such a system, a foundation strong enough to hold the universe. But then, in 1931, a young Austrian logician named Kurt Gödel broke it. He didn't break mathematics. He broke its dream of completeness. And in doing so, he changed how we see knowledge itself. The dream of logic. At the turn of the 20th century, thinkers like Russell, Hilbert, and Whitehead sought to reduce mathematics to pure logic. They wanted a system where all truths could be deduced from a fixed set of axioms, like chess, but for reality. You start with a few simple rules. You follow them precisely, and the whole universe unfolds. This was the age of confidence, until Gödel quietly proved that the system could never complete itself. The first theorem, Gödel's first incompleteness theorem, says, in any consistent formal system rich enough to describe arithmetic, there exist true statements that cannot be proven within the system. In other words, some truths are real, but unprovable. They exist, but cannot be caught. They are visible from the outside, but invisible from within. Like trying to bite your own teeth. How he did it? Gödel used mathematics to turn the system on itself. He found a way to encode logic as numbers. He created a statement that essentially says, this statement is not provable within this system. If the system could prove it, it would be false. If it couldn't, then it's true, but unprovable. Either way, the system fails to contain its own truth. He created a mathematical version of the liar paradox, and he buried it deep in the heart of logic itself. The second theorem. As if that wasn't enough, Gödel's second theorem goes further. A system cannot prove its own consistency. In simple terms, you cannot, from within a system, prove that the system is trustworthy. You can use the rules, but you cannot prove that the rules won't betray you. You are a prisoner who cannot be sure the prison exists. What it means, Gödel's theorems are not about math alone. They're about the limits of any formal system, language, reason, belief, even the mind itself. If your thoughts follow rules, then there are truths your mind cannot reach. If your worldview is built from axioms, then it contains blind spots it cannot illuminate. And if logic itself cannot prove its own sanity, then what exactly can? Living with incompleteness. Most of the time, we don't notice. We believe in what can be proved. We trust the ground beneath our thinking. But in moments of quiet doubt, in the still hours, we feel the tremor. There may be truths we will never grasp. Not because they're hidden, but because we are inside the system that fails to reach them. You are a mind trying to understand itself with itself. And sometimes, that's not enough. So tonight, as your thoughts slow and the edges of your logic begin to blur, ask yourself, what if there are truths you'll never find? Not because they're far away, but because they are too close. What if your certainty is only what fits inside your frame? And what if what matters most is just beyond your reach? The illusion of explanatory depth. You think you know how a zipper works. You've used it for years. Pulled it up, pulled it down. Simple. Now, try to explain it. How do the teeth lock together? What moves? What catches? Why doesn't it jam all the time? You pause. You frown. You realize you don't actually know. This is the illusion of explanatory depth. The feeling that you understand something far more deeply than you actually do. Where it lives. It lives in the familiar. You think you understand how a toilet flushes, how a bicycle turns, how planes fly, how rain forms, how governments work, how memory functions. But when asked to explain, clearly, step by step, your confidence shrinks. You don't have answers. You have fragments, blurred diagrams, snippets of vocabulary, a vague sense of structure without foundation. The study. In one experiment, researchers asked people to rate how well they understood everyday things. A lock, a ballpoint pen, a helicopter. Most rated themselves highly. Then came the second part. Please explain it in detail. And suddenly, scores dropped. People realized what they thought was knowledge was only familiarity. Knowing about something is not the same as knowing how it works. Why it happens. Your brain is efficient. It doesn't store schematics. It stores access. If you know where to find an explanation, you feel like you already have it. If you've heard it once, you feel like you understand it. You confuse recognition with comprehension. The mind feels full, even when it's hollow. Why it matters. This illusion lives quietly until challenged. But when it is, in debate, in crisis, in teaching, the gap becomes obvious. We speak confidently about politics, technology, biology, ethics, as if we hold the gears in our hands. But often, we're repeating phrases. Not knowledge, not depth, just noise shaped like certainty. The risk. The illusion leads to overconfidence, decisions made too quickly, beliefs defended too sharply, and when confronted, we double down instead of stepping back. Because admitting shallow understanding feels like shame, but it doesn't have to be. The gift of not knowing to say, "I don't really understand this," isn't weakness. It's honesty. It's the first step toward clarity. And in a world drowning in surface and speed, pausing to explore something deeply is rare and powerful. So tonight, as your thoughts float between what you know and what you only think you know, ask yourself, could you explain the sunrise, the taste of salt, your own attention? And if not, what else feels deep but is only skin? Mary the color scientist, knowing without seeing. Meet Mary. She is a scientist, brilliant, methodical. She knows everything there is to know about color. Wavelengths, photons, optics, the neurobiology of vision, the chemistry of cones and rods, the cognitive science of perception. She studied it all, but there's a catch. Mary lives in a black and white room. The books are grayscale. The screens, the clothes, the walls, all drained of hue. She has never seen color, never tasted the vividness of red, never felt the difference between blue and green as a sensation. Her knowledge is perfect, but her experience is absent. Then one day, Mary leaves the room. She steps into the world and sees a ripe tomato, a red balloon, a sunset. And something happens. Not just a reaction, not just retinal stimulation, but something new, something only she can feel. She sees red, and for the first time, she knows what it's like. Not the concept, not the explanation, but the qualia, the subjective, inner quality of color. What has she learned? This is the question posed by philosopher Frank Jackson in 1982. If Mary knew everything about color, but had never seen it, then upon seeing red, does she learn something new? If yes, then there are truths about experience that can't be captured by science alone. There is knowledge that's not objective, not external, not explainable in third-person language. There is knowing that must be felt. And if that's true, then consciousness is not just function. It's not just data. It's something else. Something no textbook can hold. Knowledge versus experience. What Mary lacked was not information. She had the math. She had the logic. She could predict exactly how red light would interact with a retina, but she couldn't feel the redness. Because knowledge about is not the same as knowledge from within. There are facts you can memorize, and facts you can only live. The taste of salt, the ache of nostalgia, the weight of silence, the warmth of color. They do not live in explanation. They live in presence. A problem for physicalism. If all truths are physical, if everything about the mind can be reduced to brain states, then Mary should not learn anything new, because she already had all the data. But she does learn something, or so it seems. So perhaps there are truths that lie beyond the physical, not in contradiction, but in depth. Perhaps experience is layered, some layers flat, some glowing, and some invisible until we step outside. The edge of the room. We are all Mary in some way. There are things we know from books, and things we don't know until we feel them. Grief, love, freedom, fear. You can read about death 1,000 times, but when it enters your life, you understand something new. You can study meditation, but until you sit in silence, you don't know what silence is. You can know all the facts about the sun, but the warmth on your skin is a different kind of truth. So tonight, as your mind wanders its quiet corridors and the colors of day fade into grayscale, ask yourself, what do you know only because you've lived it? And what truths might be waiting just beyond the door? If Mary could learn something new by seeing red, what might you discover when you finally open your own colorless room? Moral luck. Two people drive home. Both drink too much. Both ignore the warning signs. Both speed through the same dark road. One gets home safely. The other hits a pedestrian. Same actions. Same intentions. Different outcomes. One is just reckless. The other is a criminal. But why? If what matters is choice, and they made the same choice, why does luck change the weight of their morality? This is the problem of moral luck. What is moral luck? The idea is simple and disturbing. We judge people not just for what they choose, but for how things happen to turn out. And outcomes often depend on luck, randomness, chance, timing, weather, the invisible machinery of reality. But our praise and blame ignore that. We punish the driver who kills. We forgive the one who didn't, even if both did the same thing. The 4 kinds of luck. Philosopher Thomas Nagel broke it down. Resultant luck. What happens because of your actions? You fire a gun. It hits a person, or it misses. Circumstantial luck. The situation you're placed in. Some are born in peace, others into war. Constitutive luck. Your traits and temperament. Are you brave, patient, cruel? You didn't choose. Causal luck. The chain of events that made you you. Your genetics, your childhood, your environment. In each case, we are shaped by what we don't control, and yet we are held responsible as if we do. The unfairness we can't escape. We want morality to be just, based on intentions, not outcomes, on character, not accidents. But the world doesn't cooperate. One child grows up safe, another grows up angry. One soldier fires in fear, another holds their fire. We judge them, even though we know they didn't choose the dice they rolled. Moral luck means that justice is never entirely fair. Why it haunts us? Because we want to believe in control, that we earn our rewards, that we deserve our punishments. But moral luck whispers, maybe you don't. Maybe your best moment was luck. Maybe your worst sin was timing. Maybe the difference between your life and someone else's was only inches or seconds. Can we fix it? Some philosophers say we must ignore luck, only judge intention, only blame what was in your power. Others say that's impossible, that outcomes change meaning, that morality without context is empty. The tension remains. And in everyday life, we don't wait to resolve it. We judge, we punish, we forgive. Often, without knowing what part of the story was chosen and what part was fate. So tonight, as you lie with your past and recall things you regret or things you escaped, ask yourself, was I good or just lucky? And if someone else had lived your life, with your mind, your wounds, your timing, would they have done any differently? Newcomb's paradox, the box that sees you coming. There's a table. On it, 2 boxes. Box A is transparent. You see inside, $1,000. Box B is opaque. You can't see through it. But you're told it contains either $1 million or nothing. You have a choice. Take only box B or take both boxes. Sounds simple, but there's more. Before you arrived, a predictor, a perfect one, almost godlike, looked at you, analyzed your mind, predicted your decision. If it predicted you'd take only box B, then it filled box B with $1 million. If it predicted you'd take both boxes, then it left box B empty. And the predictor has never been wrong. So now, standing at the table, what do you choose? The split 2 kinds of thinkers emerge here. The 2 boxer says, box B is already filled or empty. My choice doesn't change the past. Take both and get the extra $1,000 just in case. The 1 boxer says, the predictor is almost always right. If I take both, I get less. If I take one, I get more. So I'll take one. Both arguments sound rational. Both appeal to reason, but they lead to opposite decisions, and the tension doesn't go away. Free will versus prediction. The paradox touches something deep. Can free will exist in a world where your actions can be predicted? If someone knows what you'll do, are you still choosing? Or are you just watching a script unfold? If the predictor is perfect, then your sense of agency is an illusion. Your hesitation, your logic, your justifications, all already factored in. You are always going to take the box you're about to take. Causality in reverse. The paradox is strange because the reward seems to depend on something that happens after it. How can your future choice change what was placed in the box yesterday? But that's not what happens. You don't change the past. You just live in a world where your type of choice predicts your type of outcome, and the universe aligns accordingly, like fate that waits for you to act freely. What kind of person are you? That's the real question. Not what box you choose, but what kind of chooser you are. The predictor isn't reading your hand. It's reading your character, your tendencies, your nature. It doesn't guess what you'll do. It knows who you are. And the box responds to that. So now it's not just a game. It's a mirror. Decision theory. Divided in philosophy, this paradox splits thinkers. Causal decision theorists say, the past is fixed. Take both boxes. Evidential decision theorists say, your choice is evidence of what's in the box. Take one. And the disagreement cuts deep. Through logic, probability, metaphysics. Because it's not just about money. It's about whether reality is fixed or responsive. Whether the future is open or already carved in stone. So tonight, as your thoughts wander in quiet and the choices of your day settle into stillness, ask yourself, did you choose what you chose? Or were you always going to? And if the box knew who you'd be long before you arrived, would it still be called a choice? Philosophical zombies. You walk into a room. Someone is sitting there, reading. They nod at you, smile, sip coffee. You say hello. They say hello back. Their voice is calm. Their face reacts. They seem alive. But what if they aren't? What if behind that nod, that voice, that smile, there is nothing? No thoughts, no inner light, no experience, just behavior, just motion, just simulation. This is the idea of the philosophical zombie, a being that behaves exactly like a conscious human, but has no inner experience. It was proposed by philosopher David Chalmers in the 1990s as a way to explore the so-called hard problem of consciousness. What is it like to be? There are easy problems in neuroscience. How do eyes process light? What areas of the brain handle language or motion? These can be answered with experiments, with scans, with mechanisms. But the hard problem is different. It asks, why is there anything it is like to be you? Why does perception have a texture? Why does pain hurt? Why does color feel warm or cold? Why do we experience joy as joy and not just act like we do? This is where the zombie walks in. Imagine a being that is molecule for molecule identical to you. Same brain, same body, same memory, reaction time, vocabulary, habits. But inside, it is dark. No one is home. It doesn't feel. It doesn't know it exists. It processes, but it does not experience. You can't tell the difference. It cries when you tell it sad news. It laughs at jokes. It hesitates before confessing guilt. But it is a mask, a very good one. And if this is possible, Chalmers says, then consciousness is not reducible to physical function. There is something extra, something immaterial, something no scanner can see. And that disturbs people, because it suggests that consciousness might not just be a byproduct of the brain. It might be something deeper, something not yet understood, or not meant to be understood. Why it matters. Some philosophers reject the zombie idea. They say, if it walks like a mind, talks like a mind, and thinks like a mind, it is a mind. But Chalmers counters, you're just assuming that consciousness follows from behavior. But what if behavior is an empty shell? You can program a machine to scream when damaged. But does it feel pain, or only imitate the reaction? This leads to a terrifying uncertainty. What if you are surrounded by zombies, beings who speak and smile and weep, but are hollow inside? And worse, how would you ever know? What if the person you love has no inner world? What if your parents, your friends, your partner are just performing? What if you are? The flip side, now reverse it. What if you couldn't move or speak, but still had thoughts? What if your mind was full of memory and fear and wonder, but your body gave no sign? Would people think you're conscious, or would they treat you as a machine? Where does consciousness begin? In action, or in awareness? So tonight, as the outside world fades and your body begins to sleep, ask yourself, if someone acted exactly like you, but felt nothing, would they still be you? And if everything you've ever said, felt, remembered, could be mimicked by code or a lifeless twin, then what, in the quiet of your skull, proves you're real? Plato's Cave. In the 7th book of the Republic, Plato constructs an allegory that has haunted Western thought for over 2 millennia. Not merely a parable, and certainly not a bedtime story, it is a subtle act of provocation, a challenge, a philosophical scalpel slicing into the comfortable fabric of what we call reality. He asks us to imagine a cave. Inside it, human beings are imprisoned. From birth, they have been bound in place, legs shackled, necks fixed. They cannot turn their heads. All they can see is a blank wall in front of them. Behind them, a fire burns. Between the fire and the prisoners walks a procession of others, holding up objects, images, tools, even statues of people and animals. The fire throws shadows of these objects onto the wall, and those shadows are all the prisoners see, all they have ever seen. They watch the wall. They listen to the echoes. They give names to the moving shapes. They construct knowledge, assign meaning, argue over interpretations. They speak of justice and reality and the world, but they speak only of shadows. For Plato, this is not science fiction. It is not metaphorical decoration. It is how we live. We mistake image for essence, appearance for truth. What we see, hear, and repeat becomes our world, not because it is real, but because it is available. Now imagine one prisoner is released. At first, he is disoriented. The fire behind him, once unseen, blinds him. He is confused, resistant. He doesn't want to believe that the shadows are just shadows. His reality is being dismantled. But then, slowly, he begins to see. He sees the fire. He sees the objects casting the shadows. He turns, and for the first time, he realizes the wall was never the world. It was a screen, a theater. And if he dares to go further, if he climbs out of the cave itself, he encounters something even more blinding, the light of the sun, the true source of illumination, the realm of real being, of truth. He sees trees and sky, water and reflection, color, depth, the complexity of form and motion. And he understands the world he knew was an imitation, a copy of a copy. The journey from shadow to sun is painful, slow, and disorienting. But it is also transformative. Plato calls it the path of the philosopher, the soul turning toward the good. But the story doesn't end with enlightenment. The liberated prisoner, moved by what he has seen, descends back into the cave. He wants to free the others, to tell them the truth. But there's a problem. He can no longer see clearly in the dark. His eyes, adapted to the sun, fumble in the shadow world. The others mock him, laugh at his blindness. They say the journey has made him stupid, dangerous. And if he persists, if he insists the shadows are not real, they might kill him. Because the cave does not tolerate betrayal. And truth, for those committed to illusion, feels like an attack. Plato's allegory is not merely about knowledge. It is about the structures that shape belief. It is about politics, language, art, religion, even philosophy itself. It asks, how much of what we call truth is merely consensus? How much of our certainty is habit dressed in logic? And most disturbingly, what if the chains are self-imposed? So tonight, as the world around you darkens and you retreat into stillness, ask yourself, are you watching shadows? And if you are, do you know what casts them? What would it take to turn your head, to walk toward the fire, to ascend alone into the light? And if you did, would you return? Would you speak? Or would you too silently take your seat and watch the wall? Qualia, the unspoken texture of experience. You see the color red, not the word red, not the wavelength of light, not the label in a database, but the redness of red. What is that? You hear a violin, not just sound waves, but sadness or sweetness or longing. Where does that come from? You bite into chocolate, and there it is. Not just a chemical response, but something warm, rich, known only to you. These are qualia, the raw subjective qualities of experience. Not what you do, not what you report, but what it's like to be you. The texture of consciousness. Qualia are not behavior, not function, not logic. They are the redness of red, the taste of cinnamon, the sound of rain through a closed window. They cannot be shown. They cannot be proven. They cannot be measured. But you know they're real, because without them, you would be a machine, capable of everything but the one thing that matters: experience. The Mary thought experiment. Imagine Mary. She is a brilliant neuroscientist. She lives in a room where everything is black and white. She's never seen color, but she studies it. She knows everything about how color works: the physics, the biology, the perception. She knows what red does to the eye. She can draw its waveform. She can predict exactly how the brain reacts when red appears. But one day, she steps outside the room. She sees red, and something new happens. A new fact, a new dimension, a kind of knowledge she never had before. Because no amount of data could prepare her for what red feels like. That is qualia. The problem for science is powerful. It can describe motion, weight, shape, charge. It can map neurons. It can explain behavior. But it struggles with the first person. What is it like to be a bat, or a fish, or another person? What is it like to feel fear, to remember a kiss, to see yellow when no one else is looking? Science can describe the process, but not the presence, not the glow, not the something it is like. And yet, for each of us, that something is the most real thing we know. Can qualia be shared? You can say, this tastes like metal. This sounds warm. This color feels cold. But do those words mean the same thing to the person hearing them? When you say blue, do they see what you see? Or do they only call it blue because they learned to? What if your blue is my orange? What if your joy feels like my confusion? We use the same words. We live in different worlds, and we never truly know what someone else's qualia feel like. Are we just machines? If qualia are real, truly, deeply real, then we are more than machines, because machines simulate, they calculate, they output, but they don't feel, they don't glow on the inside. Or do they? As artificial minds grow more complex, as their behavior becomes indistinguishable, we are forced to ask, if it says it feels, does that mean it does? And if it acts like it sees red, has it seen it? And if not, how do you know that you have? So tonight, as the light fades behind your eyes and your mind begins to drift inward, ask yourself, what is this quiet feeling? Where does it live? What is it made of? And if no one else can ever touch it, not even in theory, then what exactly are you? An object or a flame? Russell's Paradox. Imagine a library, a perfect library. Every book is categorized, labeled, and shelved. Some books are about other books. Some are about themselves. Now imagine there's a shelf for books that do not mention themselves. That shelf contains books on war, birds, poetry, anything that never refers to itself. But now, ask the librarian, should the list of books that do not mention themselves be placed on that shelf? If you put it on the shelf, it refers to itself, so it shouldn't be there. But if you don't, then it doesn't refer to itself, so it should be there. Either way, the rule breaks. The system turns inward, and logic collapses. This is Russell's paradox, the set of all sets. In 1901, British philosopher and logician Bertrand Russell discovered something unsettling. He was working in set theory, the mathematics of grouping. You can define a set of apples, a set of numbers, even a set of all sets. Simple enough. But then he asked, what about the set of all sets that do not contain themselves? Some sets contain themselves, like the set of all things that are not apples. It contains itself because it's not an apple. Some don't, like the set of all teacups. That set is not a teacup, so it doesn't belong. But what about this strange one? The set of all sets that don't contain themselves? Does it contain itself? The loop. If it does contain itself, then by definition, it should not. But if it does not contain itself, then by definition, it should. It both contains and excludes itself. A contradiction, a logical short circuit, a system that undoes itself simply by being asked about itself. Why it shook the foundations. At the time, mathematics was being rebuilt. Thinkers like Frege and Cantor believed that all of math could be grounded in logic. They were building cathedrals of structure, perfect, unshakable systems. But Russell's paradox cracked the foundation. It showed that even the most careful rules could unravel if they allowed too much self-reference. You can describe the world. You can even describe language. But when you let language describe itself, it gets slippery, a tamed system. To fix this, Russell and others introduced types. They restricted sets. You can have a set of apples, a set of sets of apples, but not a set of all sets, because that would allow dangerous recursion. This is called type theory, a way to keep language from folding into itself and imploding. Modern logic and programming still use this idea, because systems don't handle self-reference well. They loop, they choke, they fracture. The deeper lesson, Russell's paradox isn't just a glitch in math. It's a mirror. It asks, what happens when a system tries to include itself? What happens when the mind tries to explain the mind? When language tries to define truth? When logic questions logic? Sometimes the answer is silence, or contradiction, or collapse. So tonight, as your thoughts spiral inward, circling your own mind, ask yourself, what happens when you try to define you? Are you part of yourself, or outside yourself? And if you drew a circle around everything you know, would you belong inside it? Or would you be the one thing left out? The Barber Paradox. Who shaves the man who shaves everyone? There is a town, a quiet town, with quiet rules. In this town, there is a barber, and the barber follows one simple rule. He shaves all the men in the town who do not shave themselves, and only them. That's it. He does not shave men who shave themselves. He only shaves those who don't. The town runs smoothly. Everyone knows the rule. It's clean, logical. Until one question is asked, who shaves the barber? And everything falls apart. Logic tied in a knot. Let's walk through it. If the barber does not shave himself, then by the rule, he must, because he shaves all those who don't. But if he does shave himself, then he's shaving someone who shaves himself, which he's not allowed to do. Either way, the rule is broken. The definition undoes itself. It's a loop, a contradiction, a paradox. Russell's trap. The Barber Paradox was introduced by Bertrand Russell in the early 20th century. But it isn't really about barbers. It's about sets and definitions that refer to themselves. Russell used it to point out a problem in the foundations of mathematics. Imagine the set of all sets that do not contain themselves. Does that set include itself? If it does, then it shouldn't. If it doesn't, then it should. The same loop, the same paradox, a clean rule that implodes under its own logic. Why it matters? We build systems to make things make sense. Mathematics, language, law, programming, thought. But sometimes, a system contains the seed of its own failure, a definition that turns inward and devours itself. The barber is a mirror. He shows that rules can become unstable when they try to include themselves, and that some truths cannot be neatly categorized. They wobble, they resist, they unravel. Living the paradox, you felt this too. You say, I don't take advice from people who give advice. Or, I don't believe anyone who says they're honest. Or you try to trust your mind, using your mind. You become the barber, trapped in a rule that catches itself. And the more you try to follow it, the more it pulls you apart. Escaping the loop. Russell's solution was to create types, to separate levels of logic, to say, some statements can't refer to themselves. In daily life, the escape is simpler. Recognize the loop, step outside it. Sometimes, you must stop shaving definitions with absolute razors. Sometimes, you just let the barber grow a beard. Split brain. Imagine a man. He looks normal. He smiles, speaks, drives a car. He laughs at jokes. He answers questions. But inside his skull, there are two minds, two centers of thought, two selves, each with its own knowledge, memory, and perception. And they don't speak to each other. The corpus callosum. Your brain has two hemispheres, left and right. They are connected by a thick bundle of nerves called the corpus callosum. This bridge allows the hemispheres to share information, to cooperate, to feel like one mind. But in some patients with severe epilepsy, this bridge has been severed surgically, a last resort to stop the storm of seizures from spreading. After the operation, the patient feels fine. No pain, no major changes. but something hidden has shifted. The experiment. A scientist places a screen in front of the patient, a dot in the middle. Images flash briefly, one on the left, one on the right. Here's the twist. Your left eye sends data to the right hemisphere. Your right eye sends data to the left hemisphere. And language, speech, writing, explanation lives almost entirely in the left hemisphere. So when the scientist shows the word key to the left eye, the right brain sees it, but the left brain can't explain it. The patient says, "I didn't see anything." But when asked to reach into a box with their left hand, which is controlled by the right brain, they pull out a key. Two minds, one body. It gets stranger. Sometimes one hand buttons the shirt while the other unbuttons it. One hand grabs a book while the other pushes it away. One brain chooses the dress. The other rips it off, as if one person was silently disagreeing with themselves. But which side is you? Is it the half that speaks or the one that acts? Are you the words or the will? What is a self? These patients raise a terrifying question. Is the self a unity or a committee? Are you one or many? And if a tiny cut in the brain can split the mind in two, then how solid was the I to begin with? You say, "I feel, I want, I remember." But which part of you is speaking? Are you one person with many parts, or many parts pretending to be one person? The illusion of wholeness. Most of the time, the two hemispheres work so seamlessly that you never notice a division. But that unity may be an illusion, a fiction stitched together by the language center, the narrator in your head. It tells a story. It explains your actions. It edits your memory. And it insists, "This is me." Even when part of you disagrees,